welcome to the meeting of the City Council's Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee on the 26th of February 2026. Just got a few announcements to make. I'm Councillor Martin Fodor. I chair the committee. I'm going to introduce the members of the committee in a moment. And just for information, anyone not familiar, there is an emergency evacuation procedure. We're not expecting any alarms, but if there should be one, and it's the real thing, we will hear it, and we will need to leave the room by the exit, go down through the main exit of the building to the right down the ramp and assemble in front of the cathedral. That's the assembly point, but hopefully that will not be necessary. Okay, I'm going to introduce the other members of the committee first. We can start along the front row.
Abby Finch, Councillor for St George Central Ward.
Councillor Izzy Russell for Ashley Ward.
Councillor James Crawford for Bishopston and Ashley Down Ward.
Tim Kent, Councillor for Hengrove and Whitchurch Park Ward.
Councillor Mark Weston, Henbury and Brentford Ward.
Councillor Kai Dodd, Councillor for Southmead.
Councillor Tom Hennard, Councillor for Horfield Ward.
Kirsty Tate, Vice Chair, Councillor for Hartcliffe and Withywood Ward.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. We've got full attendance, no apologies for absence and no substitutions. Okay. Item 3, we have to check, are there any declarations of interest by any members of the committee in anything on their business tonight? Can I see if there are any? I don't see any. Okay, so we can continue. Item 4 is the minutes of the previous meetings, and there were 2 meetings. We held the full committee meeting on the 18th of December 2025 and an extraordinary meeting on the 3rd of February 2026. Can we agree that they're a correct record, and can we take them together? Would anyone like to second that?
I can second that.
Thanks, Councillor Tate. So they've agreed that's a correct record of the meetings. So
everyone's happy with that.
Yep, and there were no amendments or anything. So I shall sign those as the correct record. Thank you. Item 5 is Chair's announcements, and I just have 2 or 3 brief announcements. Just some positive news. You may have seen in the news that the probation service have issued a publicity statement about our community payback scheme and the success that has been. It's the community payback scheme that does an awful lot of work with our street scene groups, and they've recognised how important that work is and the impact that's had with all the positive work that has been carried out by those people carrying out the community payback. We do hope that will continue. So that's good news for the collaboration between the council and the probation service. Secondly, international recognition from the Green Events International organisation that has a global conference. It was held in London recently, and the Bristol Battery Hub that's offering to provide diesel-free power solutions to events through the summer at up to 20 events in Bristol has been recognised, and there was international interest in hearing about that trial, which will be carried out I hope in the summer. And then finally, in terms of the Council's budget, which was approved in February, the good news for this committee, and we'll come back to it in the agenda, is additional funding for restoring a fly tip collection round, a street sweeping collection round, and the monitoring of CCTV to help with the enforcement of prosecution of fly tipping. So that is positive news for us. Now, item 6 is the public forum. We've had quite a few items of public forum. There's up to 30 minutes for this section where there could be questions, statements or petitions, although there are no petitions today. In fact, there was a closing date, but some items were received late. But just to be frank, I wanted to make sure they could be heard today. So we waived the deadline, and we've included a number of questions that would have missed the deadline for getting answers today. I wanted people to get their answers sooner and not have to come back to the next meeting. But do be aware, it isn't always possible to take late items for that. Each questioner who submitted a question is able to answer up to 2 oral supplementary questions in total. In other words, based on the response that they have all been sent, they could ask 2 follow-up questions. It's got to be based on the original question and not a fresh subject. We may have to follow up with a written reply, but we'll try and get you an answer either in the meeting or afterwards. Of the people who tabled questions, I'm told there are at least 4 of you here, but I don't see Vasily in the audience, who tabled questions 8 and 9. So we'll pass over those. He has had the responses to his question. Questions 10 and 11 were received from Pavlos Kyriakou. I hope I pronounced your name right. Welcome back. You had 2 questions about St Paul's and Albany Road. You've had the responses. Do you have supplementary questions for those? Thank you.
I've got to talk for here, haven't I? What I've decided to do, I'm allowed to read both of my questions out, but I've decided to just read out one of them so there's more time for the others who want to read their questions all out. I won't read out my second one, but I will want to reply to a counter question on the second one. So if you allow me to read the first one out, you can...
Remember, the purpose is to say you've had a reply, what are the supplementary questions? That's the important bit for you, because we have all received your questions.
So what I've just offered is I could read both of them out. I've chosen to read one, so that there's more time for the others, because they want to read their questions out in full. Yeah. So I'm helping you out here, Mark.
Okay, apparently. Please try to summarise, because we have all received your questions, and the answers are publicly available on the website.
I'm trying to help you out here by reading out less questions.
Please do summarise and...
I'm not able to summarise. I can only read from the top of the piece of paper to the bottom of the piece of paper. Well, because I'm not a politician. I'm just a citizen.
I understand. I hope we get to the supplementaries in time.
You will definitely get to the supplementary, and I've kept my supplementaries very short, so they're not another essay. Yeah, thank you. So in order for my question to make sense, it is essential to quote an email dated 26th of January that I sent to Martin Fodder and all my Ashley Ward councillors. Dear all, I had a very productive meeting with Ken. He must be exhausted, though he's looking very well this evening. As the deadline for the 2026 legislation approaches and the decision on the failed St Paul's waste management experiment becomes imminent, this is my final appeal for you to take this opportunity to do the right thing. This legislation is fundamentally about levelling up and the phasing out of waste, which would in turn facilitate your goal of 3 weekly non-recyclable collections. The removal of our skips on wheels that currently blight St Paul's and generate biblical levels of additional waste would represent a meaningful correction of a long-standing wrong. Doing so will allow the new administration to take ownership of a clear improvement to residents' quality of life and to our environment. Your new leader, Zach, has spoken strongly and convincingly about levelling up and about listening to communities that have historically been overlooked. St Paul's is precisely such a community. Under the previous administration, and with involvement of Bristol Waste Company, residents' concerns were neglected, arguably influenced by persistent socio-economic stereotypes. This is an opportunity to demonstrate that this approach has generally changed. If your leader were reading this, the questions he might reasonably ask include: why was St Paul's treated differently from other areas? Why was a failed experiment allowed to persist for so long? Who truly benefits from maintaining the current system? And how does retaining it align with your stated commitments to levelling up and the environment? Most of these skips are placed illegally. Removing them is both simpler and more defensible than attempting to retrospectively legalise them. Should they remain, responsibility will rest squarely with the current administration. At that point, it would no longer be possible to attribute a situation to past decisions by previous leaderships or Bristol Waste Company. Moreover, maintaining the status quo would directly contradict your leader's stated principles and risk alienating the very voters you have pledged to represent and support. This decision matters, not just politically, but ethically and practically. It is a chance to demonstrate leadership, consistency, and genuine commitment to fairness. Please don't let St Paul's become the UK's first green slum. I think I said all the best after that, yeah. Right. Just a few weeks later, sadly, it appears you have chosen failure. and a continuation of the failed social experiment. The excuses are gone. You had control, you had leverage through Bristol Waste contract negotiations, you had the 2026 recycling legislation, you had additional money from DEFRA, you had Zach asking you to target these exact areas, and you are the Green Party. For around 9 months, a subcommittee worked on redesigning Bristol's failing waste management system. During the December the 18th committee, this was discussed, and a member stated on camera that the plan had been watered down, specifically in relation to our communal skips. I now understand what he meant. We have been told that you have decided to retain all our skips when you look at the trial maps. One area has effectively been forgotten, the so-called failed social experiment zone, the area of greatest need, the precise area that the new legislation was meant to address. Effectively, we have become the land that time forgot. So my question is this: please provide names of all the councillors who sat on. This is where you're meant to lick your fingers, aren't you? Yeah. Yeah, who sat on that committee so that the Ashley Ward residents can see clearly who is responsible for this decision? I'll try to read it out as quick as possible.
We have given you the answers. They were in the papers of that meeting.
Yes, that's right. So am I now allowed to read my subsequent question?
If you have one of your 2 supplementary questions, please ask it now.
Okay. Yeah, so what I said was my subsequent question is short, so please allow me to finish it. You don't seem to have understood my question. I needed to know the names in order to direct my subsequent question to the right people. I was referring to the subcommittee that worked on redesigning Bristol's failing waste management system, including our skips and St Paul's. I was informed of this review by Martin Fodder, Councillor Tim and Councillor Izzy. I was told my Ashley councillor Izzy was on the committee. This committee conclusion was discussed on the 18th of December, and one member described it as watered down with ref to our skips. So as you have collectively decided to be responsible for the review, I will ask my subsequent question to all the politicians in the room. I'm very grateful to Hannah Sturman. I'm a bit nervous this evening. I don't know what it is. I'm very grateful to Hannah Sturman. Oh, here we go, sorry. I'm very grateful to Hannah Sturman sharing some of the review's decisions dated the 6th of February. Hi, Pav. See below for more information on the trial. Recycling Pilot 2026, Bristol Waste Company. I have attached maps to show which streets are in the trial area. Please note the trial is being undertaken with households on standard curbside collection, so it does not include communal mini recycling centres, or what we refer to as non-standard, that are predominantly flats above shops. She is clearly and honestly referring to our skips. Why did your review forget us and conclude that the status quo should continue in the skip areas of St Paul's?
If that was your supplementary, the answer you got given was correct. It was the names of all the members of the committee at the time who were all on the Task and Finish group. That Task and Finish group was reviewing the waste collection services that are now going to be issued with new containers, new sacks. It was not about the mini recycling centres, because it was not changing those services in that report. That report related to a specific task. Sorry, I'm trying to answer your question. The specific task of the Task and Finish group was primarily to look at the street-by-street recycling services where weekly boxes and bins are collected, and it did that. So those were the members of that. Those were the members of that group, and we've given you the name of the members of that group. That is a different service. We have a number of services covering different types of housing in Bristol, and that was a different service. It's being looked at right now in... Yeah.
Big hole in the middle of it, which is the St Paul's Council tip zone, and there are no little.
I have answered your supplementary question.
We are not part of the trial, but all the other areas are part of the trial. Why are we not part of the trial?
You've had a meeting last night about what's being done in your area.
No, I'm asking you why are we not part of the trial?
It's a different service. We had a meeting about your service, and that happened last night, I believe. But this was a task and finish group looking at the houses who put out boxes on a weekly basis for recycling. It is a different part of the service. I hope that's clear. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards if that's any help. So you said you had a supplementary question about your second question that you've had an answer for. Do you have a supplementary?
I've got a supplementary question regarding my second question,
sure.
Which I'm not going to read out because, like I said, I wanted people to have more time to read their questions out. But I will make a little statement which is from the top of my question, and it basically says, if you place a skip at the end of a residential street, people will fill it. If you empty it twice a week, you create a culture. Right, and my subsequent question is... Once again, you have failed to understand my question. We all know your budgets have been set and money allocated for the new legislation changes a long time ago. It's all over the news. We are 4 weeks away from the new financial year. It's ludicrous to suggest, when we have all seen the maps and the decision made not to include the skips area in the trial that I shared in my last question, that it is still under review. All the surrounding areas without skips are to get a better service apart from the land that time forgot. So I ask my question again, is the decision a dual sack solution for both recycling and waste, or recycling sacks only? Because the consequences matter. If a dual sack solution, then our skips can be removed, preventing what amounts to a football pitch of excess waste and recycling from going to the incinerator. If it is recycling only, then you are accepting that excess residual waste and failings to meet both the spirit and the intent of the 2026 recycling legislation. Or I'll put it, I haven't finished.
I
haven't finished the supplementary question. Or I will put it another way. Does retaining our skips reduce waste and level up the main goals of the 2026 legislation? And why are you not losing sleep over the football pitch of excess waste alone annually from my street, of which it all goes to an incinerator, the UK's dirtiest form of energy production?
So we have an answer to your supplementary question. Go ahead, Ken.
So, Pav, to clarify, when I met with you, the review that happened last year was the main collection service, whether it went from a fortnightly collection service to a 3-weekly collection service, and that included some reinvestments that would have borne out in some improvements in St Paul's. The decision was taken in December. The decision went away that everyone knows about. When I met with you in January, I said there was an operational review of St Paul's, looking at all the 4 services in St Paul's and seeing how we could provide the services better, along with potentially the reinvestment of an additional fly tip removal round, which has impacted adversely on St Paul's when it was removed in 23. And the non-standard service, which is a refuse and recycling collection service for typeface properties. And what we're looking to do is roll that out on the arterial routes in the city centre, and in St Paul's where we decide it is operationally feasible. I'm expecting the review this month, in March, to come back from Bristol Waste to see how we can improve and reduce the number of large communal bins on the streets, and then with some long-term recommendations for how we could get rid of them entirely, or formalising some of the arrangements like you would have in blocks of flats. And that is where we're at. So there is a review happening. There is investment that is going to benefit St Paul's. The trial area that you're talking about is the container refresh area, and we're doing it in and around your area as the first place, because we're able to do that with distinct rounds, so we can monitor the benefit in an area, and that was where we are. We are looking that you may have some improvements with that. Some properties may go onto the red sacks, get the red sack. Some places will get the non-standard. So but that decision, you need to allow a bit of time for us to review it and then come to the community with a decision on how we can move forward.
That I empty twice a week, and you can put whatever you like in them. I can go and put 120 bags in those bins tomorrow when they're emptied, because that's the capacity. I can put 120 bags in tomorrow. Giving us a sack. No, this is important. 30 seconds. Giving us a sack to put our recycling in is amicable. But if the lorry drives past the 6 skips which are full of the recycling to collect the sacks, it's ludicrous.
I did say that we are looking to remove a lot of them, and the challenge that you have in St Paul's is, since the service was introduced in 2011, we have data to show that the population, or the density of properties, has gone from 2,500 to 4,000. So the number of large Euro bins on the streets has increased, and we are looking at long-term opportunities to maybe hold landlords to account where they're not housing waste for their properties in the curtilage of their properties, because they're making it a street issue and a council issue rather than their own issue. So we're looking at that, but that's more of a long term, and we'll be coming back to this committee towards the summer with a review of what we could potentially do to hold landlords of account with HMOs which are causing these sorts of problems. So, you know, all the skips, as you call them, we will be looking to get rid of them where we can.
So we're going to have to move on, Pav, because we're halfway through the public forum now, Pav. So we're going to have to move on, and other people have tabled questions. I'd like to get them answers, chance to get supplementary questions to their answers as well.
Am I able to respond to Pav quickly? Hi. I wanted to apologise because I had said to you that the MRC's communal bins would be included in the task and finish group that I was on, and they weren't, clearly. Yeah, it turns out that there's way more different services than I thought within Bristol Waste, and that it's taking a lot more time. Yeah, I do want to thank you for your engagement and for your patience, because it is taking longer than I thought, but it is on our agenda. I do want to get rid of them, and more is happening behind the scenes. I am emailing Ken and Kurt and Martin and Abby and trying to find solutions. I'm really sorry that it hasn't happened sooner, but I hope that this engagement that we've got over the next 6 weeks is going to lead to a conclusion that we all want. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to address that to you personally, Pav, and I am grateful for all of your work on it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Russell. And we are in this 6-week period. That work is being done. I can assure you, I'm sorry it's taken a while, but that's what we committed to in the community meeting a few weeks ago. So we've got questions that have been answered for Tara Moran. Do you have supplementary questions for your answers?
Hello, my name is Tara
sorry.
Moran.
Oh,
I think some of you recognise me because I used to work here in community engagement, actually. And I would actually really appreciate if there's a moment, I won't take as long, but I would appreciate to have my voice, my questions in my voice. Too often I find myself oppressed or just barely making it around the table. So because I'm here, I would like to say my questions, and then I have supplementary questions. So I know you've responded, but I would, it's quite short and to the point. Is that all right, Martin, please?
Okay, no,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We wanted to hear these. They would have been put off to next Monday if we'd followed the rules, but I want you to get,
Sorry, yes,
get your chance.
it's the point of crisis in St. Paul, so I think we appreciate it greatly to actually, have our voice heard. So can I have my questions on the screen, please, if it's possible, like how Pav's was? Yeah, and I know it's got answers too, so maybe the answers will be useful to have.
While you're doing that, could I just apologise, Emma? I've taken this in the wrong order, but we will come to you after this. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question around the Bristol City Council and Bristol Waste Company's obligations with regards to the ongoing failures in timely and efficient waste collection and provision in St. Paul's. Can you confirm whether Bristol City Council or Bristol Waste Company are currently meeting their contractual obligations in St. Paul's? This is a question for the Environmental Board and the leader of Bristol City Council, Tony Dyer.
So you've had a written answer which points out it's led by this committee. Right. Did you have a supplementary for the answer?
Yes, I did. So in the answer you say that it's a matter, you call it a matter, we call it a crisis, a matter monitored by the Council's Environment and this committee right here. And that you focus on performance measures across the city. I would like to know why you don't focus on St. Paul's when there's inequity in the situation here. Why are there no performance measures focused purely on St. Paul's, especially since we've been campaigning as the Better Streets campaign for almost 2 years, where we brought the rubbish in our area and did an exhibition right next door and invited everyone in Council and Bristol Waste to come and see what we have to live like.
I think thank you for that supplementary question. I think the answer is we monitor the overall operation. We don't publish KPIs ward by ward or area by area. That has not happened anywhere in the city. We are aware of this because you're raising questions and we know there are operational issues. And that's why we're trying to address all those operations in your area. If I could ask Officer Ken Lawson to comment as well. Thank you.
I think the other thing that we need to acknowledge is that the web forms that the council have need updating, and that work is due to be done this year. That would allow you to report issues easier, and we would be able to track complaints and service requests, which would then give us more data than we currently have. So there is failings in the way that things are reported as well.
My second question would be that continuous reporting by people that feel continuously let down by the systems, by unjust systems that are not designed with them in mind, are another oppressive force to say, go online, we're going to improve the system, we're going to improve, we're going to make it a bit more accessible for you online. There is no consideration here to people who are, like me, very tired, very exhausted. I'm not a paid community worker. I'm not. I have another job. I have a full-time job. It's also Ramadan right now. So none of this feels right. So I would like to say that I think it's very oppressive. I think we all agree that it's very oppressive to say that there will be, improved systems online where you can report. I think it's great. I think people will use it. But I think it's not the right answer when we're at this point of crisis. So I would like to ask this committee here to give us waste contracts performance measures focused on St. Paul's. We would like a report of that, please. Focused on only St. Paul's at the current moment, the failings of the current moment, not performance measures across the city, because I think our community deserves in focus reporting and data on this. Can that be provided to us, please?
I'm not sure. We're probably going to have to go away and look at that because it's a question, is there appropriate data and can it be reported? We do get performance reports every so often, but they are general because the data is quite generalised. But we can look at that. I will make sure we do. You had a third question, but you've had 2 supplementaries. But thank you for your time. I'm not sure what's gone wrong with that. I'm not sure what's happened to the microphone. Is it switched on?
Bins and uncollected waste in St. Paul's are contributing to vermin, odour, unsafe pavements and poorer mental health and well-being. What assessment has Bristol City Council and Bristol Waste Company made to the public health of the public health impact of these failures, and what immediate steps will be taken to protect us residents? This is a question for the leader of the Bristol City Council.
We would have to go away and get an answer to that, but I can try and do that for you. Okay, so that, thank you. Yeah.
This engagement was
sorry, I do want to get on to the others, and we've got 10 minutes left for all the others.
I can't use my supplementary questions. I've got two supplementary questions for that.
You've used at least two.
Two in total? Okay, yeah. Never mind. I'll go on to the third question if that's all right.
No,
then.
well, you've had two supplementaries, which is the...
Is that all right?
That would be a third. Everyone gets up to two, but I appreciate that. We will try and get you answers. Yeah, and apologies, you had to come during Ramadan as well, but we are working on this and appreciate you got time to come here. So Emma, I apologise, I took it in the wrong order, and I am sorry because we are working on these issues. But do you have supplementary questions as well? Yes. Would you mind putting my question? Please use the microphone. This is being webcast. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. So the part that I would like, can I see question, yeah, this is the one.
You had questions 12, 13 and 14, so if you want to focus on one or other for one or two supplementaries, please do. Just say which one.
I've got to look here, sorry. Basically, one of the answers says that since COVID, there has been numerous trials of different bins and various community engagements. Well, okay, I've noticed a couple of small lids put on bins, but it's the community engagement I was interested in because I've lived in the area for 18 years and I've never been engaged in any engagement other than having to put an exhibition on out of desperation and despair, and then being invited to 3 residents that were part of the exhibition to speak to Bristol City Council and Bristol Waste over a period of 18 months, approximately every 3 months, for an hour or 2 meetings. Is that what you're counting as a community engagement? Because we're quite a narrow group. And my second question is, how is it enough? You know, considering the crisis we're in, we've been offered 1.5 poxy little workshops. Even people in flats were not invited. They never are. A block of flats too hard to fly at. It's just so inadequate. My mind is blowing. And actually, we've got a lot of solutions as the residents that live in tiny flats, and it's just such a waste. My question is, why is there not more community engagement with the actual people in the community that are suffering these problems?
Okay, thank you for that. I did come to your exhibition. I had discussion with people there, and it did open my eyes to the extent of the problem. So I thank everyone for that information and that effort you put in. Yeah. So. Yeah.
For all these reviews of the failing service, because we can help. We've got good information. We're not just the enemy.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm not sure what's been documented in terms of engagement, meetings, visits to the sites, dialogue of various sorts. I'm not sure if any officers can answer that here and now, but I think Ken could give a summary to some extent.
So, 2019, there was a review of the service. The Bristol Waste engagement team did go out and speak to some residents to canvass different ideas in different roads. Not every household, because if you're engaging with every household, you need more resource in people going out and engaging. And we did deep cleanses and we moved some of the bins and we changed things around. In 2023, we worked with the local community because there were complaints around the grubbiness of the bins, and we got the local school to design the wraps to make the bins colourful, to try and deter the tagging that happens on them, to try and make them look colourful, to try and engage people to use them properly. And then I know it's been this year, but obviously there's community meetings with you that Kurt James chairs, and then there are the 2 workshops. So we certainly, as we go forward, when we talk about the changes that are going to be made, we do need to improve the way we engage with the community, and we will talk to you and Tara and Pav about how we can improve that.
Thanks for that answer. I do appreciate all your time, those of you coming here. We do have time, I hope, just for the 3 people who I believe are here for the public forum statements as well, because we want to give people a chance to read out statements they've submitted. And the first one, and I apologise, you had to come back, Sarah Kemlin, from a previous meeting because the item wasn't heard at that meeting. So please get the microphone and bring your statement here this time. Thank you.
This relates to the Climate Emergency Action Plan. Can you hear me? I welcome the commitment to tackling the causes and the impacts of the climate and nature emergencies in the action plan. The National Emergency Briefing has highlighted the necessity of such plans to reduce carbon emissions, build resilience and seek a just transition so that the impacts of policy and implementation do not increase disadvantage. The wider involvement in climate planning, both regionally and internationally, are also vital. I welcome the Council's leadership of the Core Cities Climate Change Group, and in particular the plan to endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. This was initiated by nations in the Global South, which are experiencing far greater impacts of climate-related disasters. These actions will signal Bristol City Council's continuing leadership locally, regionally and internationally on the climate and nature emergencies.
Thanks very much for your statement, and thank you for coming back to a second meeting to be able to make that. We've got one from Veronica, if you've got the microphone. Thank you for bringing your statement as well. Are you? Is Veronica not there? No. Okay, and we have, I think on behalf of the 3 Ashley Ward councillors, we have Councillor Tim White with a statement about...
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I'll just paraphrase because I think you've all got it. Was at the consultation last night. There's some very positive things happened, lots of residents, but we have had consultation, maybe not enough, Emma, but the plea is we really got... This has been going on for years. I know every councillor says it's worse in my ward, but I really do think it is worse in St Paul's. We've got a confluence of different problems that make it really difficult sorting out the waste. So let's get on and listen to the consultation and put some action in place, mainly around the fly tipping and the communal bins. So that is the nature of our statement. Let's kind of get on and do it. I know it's finances, but let's also work out the costs and benefits. I've had officers say before, actually, there's some savings with getting rid of the communal bins because we don't have to keep them, pick them up. Let's do those sums. Let's get this moving, guys. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor White. And I really appreciate people have taken time to come and make us focus on this issue because it is pressing. And I think it is the area of Bristol which has had the most attention because it needs the most done, and we're going to try and do that. So I really want to be able to come back to you later and say we've made it better. Thank you for that. So that's the end of the public forum. Thanks to everyone who tabled questions and statements, even if you didn't attend. They are all on the record on the papers for this committee. So agenda item 7 is the Council's Climate Emergency Action Plan for 2026 to 2028. It's a report that we had tabled previously. It's been brought back to this committee, and I've got the officer, Alec Ivory, to summarise that report. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Hi, I'm the Climate Change Team Manager. I've actually got a handful of slides to summarise the paper about this new action plan. I don't know if you could bring those up. Do you have them? Yes, you've included them in the pack. I was asked to put them in the SharePoint, and they're in the folder. So this should be...
We will try and get your slides onto the screen.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe I should just talk through it, and the slides can catch up at some point.
Feel free to... And they will make sure they're on the website. Yeah, or they are.
Do councillors have
please do start, just so that we don't delay the...
Okay,
the meeting.
It's not the first climate action plan we have produced. In fact, it's the third climate emergency action plan the Council's made since the declaration of climate emergency in 2018, and we are still in a climate emergency. So the paper is to update you on the delivery of the previous plan and seek approval for the new plan. So starting with successful delivery, the new plan gives you the completed actions from the previous plan in an appendix. I thought it'd be useful to have that. You can see about a third of the 59 actions have been completed. 6 couldn't be completed and won't be carried forward, mainly due to the withdrawal of funding for those actions. But the rest are ongoing and featured in the new plan. Those actions which have helped the Council reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that result directly from our own operations include the street lighting replacement scheme, which I'm sure you'll remember replaced more than 36,000 lights with the latest generation of LEDs and a new control management system, saving electricity and associated costs of about £1 million a year. We've trained staff and councillors about climate change. Around 80% are trained, and this action is ongoing because, of course, we have new starters. So it appears in the new plan too. We continue to invest in our buildings to reduce their energy use and improve their heating and lighting, and we've progressed with making our fleet electric by buying electric vehicles to replace the previous fleet. You would be seeing this just repeated on slides, so don't worry too much that they're not there yet. So the actions that relate to the wider city that we've taken include the important milestone of starting the operation of Bristol City Leap in the last plan period, and that's bringing investment in energy efficiency, renewable energy and the heat network. We secured government funding to improve homes so that they're more energy efficient and less costly to heat, including through the Bright Green Homes programme, and that work will also continue in the next plan. We've improved facilities for active transport and public transport. I wanted to pinpoint this because we've succeeded actually in securing an unprecedented level of investment in Bristol's transport system in the last plan period, which has enabled us to do a large amount in the transport area of the plan, working together with partners to make better walking and cycling routes, for example, new train stations, new bus lanes and improvement to bus routes. And the final point on that slide was that we published the Keep Bristol Cool framework, so we're doing resilience and adaptation work too. This is our plan for managing heat-related risks to the city's population, public services and assets. The actions that we've taken which were aimed at empowering the people of Bristol included putting on the Think Global at Bristol exhibition, which explored climate change themes affecting people locally and globally through Bristol histories and the voices of Bristolians. This was very well attended. The slide would say 27,000 visitors. We enabled people to participate in local climate action through launching the Bristol Climate Action Investment. This is a community municipal investment in which more than £2 million has been invested to date, which will be used for projects in 3 council buildings to improve them, whilst also reducing the greenhouse gas emissions from their operation. We continue to support community climate action and community climate investment planning through our support to Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership and through our Mission Net Zero project. And we secured funding from Bloomberg's Youth Climate Action Fund, which provided over £100,000 for youth-led work. There are some nice pictures of all of these things in the slides. So turning now to the new Climate Emergency Action Plan. These are the actions we intend to take in the coming years. It's a plan to accelerate emissions reduction and improve the resilience of the city, but at the same time delivering local jobs, lower energy bills and cleaner air. The actions were developed by a range of council services, and the plan gives you a written description of these actions, and then they're all shown in a single table at Appendix 1, so you can see that all the actions in a glance. Well, there are several pages, so maybe not one glance. But you can see there are actions we'd like to take, but for which we've not yet identified funding, but they're clearly identified. So the final column where there's no tick, there's no funding yet identified. So individual decisions will need to be made for the allocation of funding to those. And that will be in line with the council's normal decision-making processes, including by other council policy committees. So I'm just pointing that out, that they'll make those decisions in line with their areas of responsibility, and approving this plan does not override that. Okay. You recall this plan was originally an item for your December meeting. So just to reassure you, this is the same plan as was prepared for that meeting in all respects but 2. Firstly, there were minor changes made to the actions on waste to reflect the committee's decisions on the topic at that meeting, specifically the tick for funding against the action to take any agreed actions to reduce waste has been removed. And secondly, one action has been removed from the plan since December, which was to put in a new bus gate and make public realm improvements along Park Street and the Triangle to improve opportunities for active travel. This was removed because in an intervening committee meeting, the Transport and Connectivity Committee decided not to proceed with that action. Great, we've caught up. There are 90 actions in total in the plan, as I said, drawn from all across our services. It will help us realise our corporate strategy priority to accelerate climate action and nature recovery. And in the plan, we've listed the actions in sections so the reader can see which are actions to reduce the remaining emissions resulting directly from the council's own operations, and then which are to do with transport and homes and so on. We're aiming to do a lot, working within the constraints of our budget. The range of actions includes continuing to invest in new infrastructure, continuing to seek external funding to support action by partners and citizens, and notably, this plan has more actions than ever before, which aim to improve the resilience of the city to the increasing impacts of climate change. If we could just move on a slide. Thank you. This is my last one. So just to summarise, we intend to work in partnership with others. Many of these actions require a partnership approach, and our work is part of that patchwork of action happening in the city. There are lots of people and organisations in Bristol taking action on climate change, and our plan is a contribution to that wider city action. It's our contribution to the new One City mission on climate and nature, and it is our part in Bristol's One City climate strategy and the associated One City climate action plan. I know that, of course, is a much larger endeavour, requiring action from everyone, and it's not something that could be achieved by council action alone. But our action plan enables us to share the types of action we're taking. It demonstrates our level of commitment and the progress we're making, which could inspire other people and organisations to take action themselves. And it shows how we're tackling climate change alongside other city priorities, so it can create many benefits for the city at the same time. We will come back to you in future to report progress on the action plan and also communicate progress through our website. There you are.
Thanks very much, Alex, and thanks to all the officers who worked on this. I know it's an immense task, Anna said, yes, because it's an umbrella for all the work across the whole council, and it's our whole council's contribution to tackling the climate emergency. And it's, the third of the multi-year sort of action plans of that. And it's very much important to demonstrate to our partners that we're taking this seriously and playing our part, and we're looking for those partnerships, those funders and so on. And it is worth noting, I'm really impressed the amount of funding that's been brought in locally, nationally, European and internationally that has helped contribute to the action here, and we're still looking so that we can do all the things that are in the action plan. So thanks for all your work on that.
Councils, local councils at this point in time are not, they don't have any statutory duties for climate change.
That's
and
correct.
They're not funded by government for that. So
yes, you're right.
Looking for external funding as well.
There are debates about a statutory duty for local authorities, but that hasn't been resolved yet, has it? So it's a chance for the committee to look at this. It's the first of our 5 reports tonight. Do we have any questions or clarifications or any comments on the plan, if we want to go straight to that? Thank you. Councillor Weston, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. I'll come to broader comments later. I noticed a lot of the community level stuff actually is unfunded at the moment. You know, there's no tick in the third column. So things like community plans and all the rest of it. I actually just wonder whether the easiest thing for there, if we're lacking funding, is it almost to try and create some kind of, you know, environmental Bible or options, and because often community groups need an idea, you know, some suggestions, and then they can run and they can access different funding to deliver it than possibly we can as a statutory body. I just wonder if there's any plan or idea to sort of try and create this consultative document to enable them to do a bit of that heavy lifting for us.
That's not the approach we've been taking. We've been working through a project called Mission Net Zero, which we lead as £5 million project funded by Innovate UK. And part of that has been planning for climate investment at the regional level and the community level, working with 3 neighbourhoods. So that is the approach we're taking at the moment, looking at how we can create larger scaled investable propositions as one way to get money, particularly from the private sector, into local communities and also at the regional level. And we think that's a much more viable proposition than asking local communities to do small-scale work and try to find funds.
Maybe I misunderstood that point, so apologies on that one. What kind of projects is what you've described delivered to date then?
That project is closing this month, so the work has been done to create community climate investment plans in those 3 communities, and then we'll be working to see how Bristol City Council could have a role in helping to facilitate the investment in those plans, but more broadly looking at a regional, larger scale investment portfolio so that we can look at private sector, because I think everybody in this sector realises there isn't enough public sector money to achieve decarbonisation of cities, and a large amount of it will have to come from the private sector.
I'd be intrigued to learn a bit more about that as it develops, if that's all right, Chair.
Certainly. And I could also signpost something that's come out of our work in partnership with the Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership, who've had 17 community climate action groups, because they published a prospectus, a community climate action prospectus, to show the many wide benefits, not just climate, not just emissions, but skills, training, education, health, and so on. And that prospectus is there, and I hope it will be used by partners, by sponsors, by local companies, by any other funding body. And it helps make the case that there are these investable options with multiple benefits. So to be continued, really. It's all work underway, and that's a resource that's available. Yeah, Councillor Tate, because you're part of one of the community groups.
So one of the community climate action partners, Heart of the S13 in South Bristol, have been involved for the last 5 years, and I just wanted to applaud. We're really lucky in Bristol that we have such a really good sustainability team, and the council saw by putting someone like Mark Leach, who's really good from Bristol City Council, within that programme early on. So that's been something that Bristol City Council has embedded in. And now there's all of these plans, community-led climate action plans. So some of that community-level work is actually, because the groundwork's been done, those charities, those organisations can then apply for different funding pots because they then know what the priorities are for those wards. And Bristol City Council have had a role in that alongside Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership. So yeah, I just wanted to applaud you basically for the work that's being done, and is exciting. And I think that now there are other regions, and there's been some news about a new lot of cohort that's from Bath as well, and further afield with WECA. So yeah, well done.
Thank you, that's great to hear. And I'll pass on those thanks to members of my team. The approach with community climate action plans is great, and that's why we wanted to take this on with Mission Net Zero and look at investment plans as well, so that those action plans can be funded in some way. So all of this work is still developing, but I think will help to support things like the regional growth strategy as well, and could be linked to that. So I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to work on this in future years.
And I think the strategic work that needs to be done, the large-scale partnerships, and this grassroots community work complement each other brilliantly, and one kind of validates the other in lots of different ways.
That's right. The community needs and the needs of the city really need to inform what happens, and so we're matching all of those things together with the regional level as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's always good to appreciate the work done, so thanks for reminding us of that. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dudd.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, good to see you here, and I'm obviously sorry about asking you to come back from the last meeting, but I think it's better that we have a proper presentation and it's dealt with properly. Yeah, I just want to thank the team for all the work that you've done over recent years, including with myself over a number of years. And I just want to say one thing. Obviously, on paper, in terms of the budget, there's obviously a line against how much the team costs. But I think you're not a cost, really, because of the success that you've had in bringing in additional funding from outside bodies like Innovate UK and the EU. So any time that you're under threat in terms of budgets, you'll definitely have our support in terms of the Labour group and making sure that your team and the work that your team do is funded adequately. I just got a question on the issue of fleets, actually, because that seems to be it's been a sticking point for a number of years now. Obviously we've just had a paper recently where we've commissioned 41 new diesel vehicles for Bristol Waste. So I just wondered how, I know obviously know your team does great work, but how that kind of sits right across the organisation in terms of that corporate responsibility, that we're not kind of just thinking in silos as different teams within the council, that collectively as an organisation that we're all signed up and facing in the right direction, because I think recently that's probably not been the case with that fleet decision.
Well, the new corporate strategy makes it very clear that climate action is the responsibility of everybody in the council, and I think there are measures in place where members of our team and service are working with other services on fleet, so I think it is very joined up at the moment. I don't know if Peter Anderson would like to say any more on fleet specifically, but I see it as being very joined up with the processes that we have, and I think we do what we can according to our budget. You know, we work as fast as we can according to the budget.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think the conversations we had regarding fleet and the paperwork that we prepared provides the evidence and the work and the procurement route and the best position for the council currently with availability of fleet and in terms of where we're focusing. So I think there's a lot of evidence that went into that report that provides that background. Clearly, we would like to be further in relation to EV infrastructure and in relation to EV vehicles for our whole fleet, but I think we can demonstrate that we are moving in the right direction and aligned to the corporate plan. Next E&S committee, we've got the EV fleet strategy, so hopefully that will bring to light our direction of travel, our commitment, and the following committee in relation to our depot strategy 2 for EV. So hopefully that will have further conversation and debate in the chamber around EV. Thanks.
Certainly, yeah. You have to have the depot, you have to have the grid's capacity fed into that depot, you have to have the charges in the depot, and then the vehicles can only be charged once they're in place and plugged in. So we're getting there, and as I say, there'll be a report coming forward to show how we're moving it all in that direction. Thanks.
Yeah, I've just got one more question for you, Alex, and then one for you, Martin. Just on the climate finance work, because obviously very early on we identified that the key issue is the level of investment that's needed, and obviously City Leap came out of that, the EU project. So is there anything else on the horizon at the moment? Because I know there might be a project at WECA potentially around investment. Is that the case?
Well, there's a connection to the growth strategy. So the regional clean energy investment plan that's been created under Mission Net Zero will be part of the delivery of the clean energy sector plan that falls within the growth strategy. So I think there'll be a big connection there, but of course we wait to see what the combined authority will put to their committee on that. Those decisions have not been made. But I think that is the potential for future financing. That's where we'd be taking that work, and you might be thinking about the Green Growth West Fund as well. That was developed under the previous externally funded project, the Net Zero Investment Co-Innovation Lab. So we looked at a number of innovative financing mechanisms under that project. I mentioned one of them actually, the Bristol Climate Action Investment, but another was the Green Growth West Fund, which was developed by a partner, BBRC, and the combined authority pledged to be the cornerstone investor of that £100 million fund by pledging £10 million. They are due to make the raise for that, but if that fund is raised, when and if that fund is raised, that would be £100 million for the region for net zero business and services that want to expand. So that could be extremely exciting as well, and sort of seen in the context of that regional portfolio of investment. So there's plenty, I think, in the pipeline in that financial area.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good to hear that summarised there, because we've got funding from our own residents through the community mutual investment. We've got influence over WECA's funding through the Green Growth West Fund. We've got the clean energy sort of plan potentially there. So I think we're seen as one of the places that really has demonstrated how to have a whole spectrum of funding of different scales, from the million or two to the 100 million potentially. And that's really good news. Not enough yet, but it's a good start. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you. And this one's for you, Martin. Just on City Leap, I've been asking for a general scrutiny paper on how well that's doing against the KPIs, probably for about a year now. I had a promise from you in November that it would be at the next meeting. Obviously, it wasn't in December. It's not obviously not at this meeting. I've checked the forward plan, and there's still not any. There's no paper on the forward plan in regards to a general scrutiny update. How well is it doing against all the KPIs that we've set out in the project? And I don't think that's good enough, really, given the scale of the project. It's a 20-year project. It's a lot of money, and I think this committee needs to be having regular updates on that project, and we've not had one in the last 2 years, really. So I think that's a bit disappointing. So my question to you is, can you ensure, I know it takes time to pull together a paper. Obviously, I mentioned in November I wanted one. But can you at the very least assure me that it will be, within the next week, it will be on the forward plan for the meeting in May? Can you do that?
What I can remind you is that since we moved to a committee system, the council-owned companies and joint ventures report to Strategy and Resources Committee, and they have done that, and they scrutinise that,
I'm not asking
and
about
they agree the business plan.
I'm not asking about the performance of the companies, though. I'm asking about
you're right.
The KPIs
that
the climate function has a responsibility for, that this committee, if you go onto the website, delegations for this committee, it says City Leap.
That's right. And everything that this committee decides that is delivered by City Leap, under the joint venture, they're entitled to bid for each of those projects. We will be monitoring. But there's a whole bundle of projects, and each one is monitored.
All right. So it sounds like you're not going to do it. So we'll be writing to you tomorrow. Okay. Requesting an extraordinary meeting.
It's just worth understanding that all of our commitments that are delivered by them are monitored for this committee. Feel free, but I hope you understand that the shareholding and the business plan and the performance of the company is not this committee. The work done by the company comes to this committee, and we regularly get reports. We've got reports regularly through the year of the projects that we commit and that the committee and that the joint venture delivers for us.
Okay, we'll write to you tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll just try and clarify the governance for you. Councillor Kent, you had a question. Sure.
Thanks. I'll try to be quick. I think mine's more a couple of quick points rather than questions. I mean, generally, this is a great paper, lots to support, as I think you would expect from committee members. There were just one or two sort of points of slight concern I thought I'd raise, because I'm afraid that's what people do. They never talk about the 99% they agree with. It's always the 1% they have an issue with. So I just wanted to raise... I just feel we could be a little bit more ambitious around electrical charging points, especially on street via lampposts. If you just think about what is 150 chargers in a city, it's not even going to be one in every 10 streets. So I think that's something which, I hope we will keep an eye on, and I hope if there's opportunities to expand on that, we will do that, and we probably will need to be doing that at speed over the next couple of years. And then how do we ensure that those are charging points that people want to use, that they're affordable? Because the thing with electric cars are they're very affordable and very efficient if you charge at home on your really cheap electric. That is not the case if you're paying commercial charging rates at charging points. So how do we make those usable by people? I suspect that is something which the council are working on at the moment to try to do. The only other thing I wanted to raise, which is a concern for me, in particularly from my ward, and maybe it's the language used, is number 12, so project 12, which is build a regional cycling centre. I would argue that we do have a cycling centre, a family cycling centre at Whitchurch, and decisions of other political groups here today was to demolish that and rebuild it in Avonmouth. I'm never too sure what the climate cost of that would be, how many thousands of extra tonnes it's going to cost in development. But I just wanted to point that out, that we do actually have a cycling centre already. I accept that decision is probably now past us, although I think there's still some debate here in this chamber, and it will be rebuilt at Avonmouth. But that's just a line of concern, but overall I will be supporting the report. Thank you.
Thanks for raising that. And your earlier point, I in fact visited some of the new lamppost charging points that are being switched on daily in up to the 150, or I think 149 have definitely going in. They've been carefully located in the areas that don't have the driveways, that don't have the destination charging, and they are complementing what's happening. And in our next meeting, I think it is, our next meeting, we will have a citywide EV charging strategy to show where they fit in. But you're right, they're not enough. They're what we could get funding for. They've been delivered by our City Loop joint venture, of course, and there will be more. But it's step by step. It's providing a network across the city. But not all homes need that. And I was reassured when a resident told me the overnight charging rate is the same as you would pay if you went to a very rapid charger. But so it's not dearer, but it is it's something that it uses the available power either slowly through the day or slowly through the night, which is all that's needed for a vehicle from time to time. But yes, if you have your own private charger, that can come in cheaper. But we're also proposing a gully charging trial where cables might be able to be across the pavement to allow people to plug in even when they have no driveway. So we're trying to meet all needs, including destinations and so on, because we've been asked, we know people have been asking for years for them, and they're finally appearing, I'm glad to say. So, Councillor Tate, you had a question.
I just wanted to reference, so on page 40 of the Climate and Ecological Emergency Plan, it says there's a clear commitment to improve waste services for flats. So I just, obviously after hearing from residents today, particularly those that are living in flats or managing communal bin arrangements, I just want to obviously echo their concerns because as we know, many of them have reports overflowing bins, contamination, fly tipping, lack of clarity around responsibility, and you know, there's some obviously operational matters there as well. So given that we've also signed up to the Just Transition Declaration, and I want to thank you for including it within the plan, we've obviously made that clear commitment to ensure that climate action doesn't deepen inequality, and yet what we heard today is that people are feeling that in place-based. So if we are serious about both the climate emergency plan and a just transition and improving waste, I feel like it's a little vague within there is my only reflection. And so, yeah, I'd just like to see, a bit more ambition.
Thank you for that.
I could just say that that's Action 49, which is one of the ones that was carried forwards from the last plan. So I'm sure colleagues in the service have more detail on that, but I don't have any in front of me.
And as we did here to say that people are working on it. I know it needs a lot of work, and there are different kinds of flats. So there will be services for flats above shops, HMOs, blocks of flats, council-owned flats, and private sector flats as well.
Great. I suppose I just wanted to highlight it because obviously it's about us communicating and working together on that. And, you know, we don't want to risk, creating entrenched inequality.
Certainly, yeah. Then, Councillor Finch, you had a question.
Thanks very much, and thank you very much for this and for the presentation. I was just interested to hear from you. I know in the past when we've heard from Alex Minchell, we've heard that there are a lot of projects where the investment might be available for them, but they also need some grant funding to get them over the line, and often it's the grant funding aspect of it that is harder to find, and I guess often sort of comes from government and we don't know when it's going to come necessarily. I wondered, is that still the case, or if not, sort of where there are projects that are sort of ready to go but just waiting for funding, what those barriers are and what's being explored in terms of other alternatives? Thanks.
Yeah, it's a good point that I'm afraid still exists as a problem for projects. Part of the findings of Mission Net Zero is that what we would need to have in place alongside our portfolio of investable projects was some kind of additional support that would bring projects through origination phases and reaching out with capacity building and community engagement beneath that, because otherwise, to Councillor Tate's point, you might only hear from certain parts of the community. You need to build capacity in all parts of the community so that people can come forward with ideas. So money is needed for that. Then money is needed for the development of those projects so that they can start to get into having a business case. Then you need some people to help them get investors when they've got a business case, and then you need to sort of monitor delivery. So all of those 4 stages need to happen. We've got parts of that in the city. So we have, for example, access to the Southwest Net Zero Hub, and they do some project development, but I think it's only when an idea has been originated, so you're kind of missing out on the bit of the first stage. They do help with some origination, but it wouldn't have that huge amount of engagement and capacity building that's needed. And then you've got a little bit of support through the Combined Authority. They have an investment readiness advisory service, and that helps people to find investment, as per the name. But I think given that we've got those good foundations, we still need more to build around that. So we're talking to various stakeholders around could more money be provided to boost that support, either regionally or nationally. I think either would work. I'm going to a conference next week where I'll be advocating those sorts of ideas to the national stakeholders who might be there. I don't see it arriving immediately, but it could be tied into things like the Warm Homes Plan money, the local power plan money. So we could use some of that as some of the seed corn development work as well, and we'd be looking to line up against any money that comes forwards in those areas. So it's a bit, it's developing at the moment. You know, it's sort of a live issue at the moment. It's a little bit to be seen in the next few months. But yeah, that is what I see as the answer to that problem. If we can try and use some of that money and advocate for a bit more of an enhanced service to support our projects.
Thanks very much. Councillor Brainard, you had a question.
Thank you, and also I'd like to extend my thanks to work you and your team. There's been some brilliant work that's happened over the many years, and I think, particularly the community climate action plans, the work with community organisations has been really brilliant. And on that note, I just wanted to talk about wind turbines for a moment. So obviously Ambition Lawrence West, I know my colleague was involved in that work. There's obviously a lot of talk about supporting community plans in this plan, which is brilliant, but nothing about sort of wind. There's a lot on solar. And I just wondered whether we're going to give any more thought to community-owned wind turbines, if there is appetite for that, trying to support those sorts of projects coming forward. And I appreciate the local power plan has only been recently published, but just as a follow-up and linked is, how could the local power plan help you deliver even more?
Well, on the point about wind turbines, the 3 community climate investment plans, as far as I know, don't contain anything about wind turbines, do they?
There was some WECA-funded work and there weren't any sites in Bristol.
No, I don't think any of those plans contained wind turbines as an option. There are some sites outside Bristol, I think, might be looking at that. And there's a lot of mention of offshore wind in the regional growth strategy and clean energy investment plan. As far as the Warm Homes Plan money and local power plan money might help, as I said, we're just waiting to see how that might be rolled out, and I'm sure we'll line up against it and make as much of that opportunity as we possibly can, because we haven't money for climate resources otherwise. So we have to use our own resources and line up against whatever external funding is available.
Sure. And it is positive to note that all the work that Bristol Energy Network, which is the community energy network in the city, has been doing over the years, has been influential and led to groups like Lawrence Western becoming ambitious enough to want a turbine. And that has influenced commitment from the West of England Combined Authority to support more community-owned turbines. I just don't think any of those yet are in Bristol. But our own joint venture City Leap is talking about a turbine on one of the larger scale power sites that we're developing within the city. And Community Energy England have long seen Bristol as one of the strongest areas for community-led energy projects. So we may see more come forward, but they are quite complex to deliver. That took many years and a lot of obstacles, but we got there. And the community is justly proud to own the largest on-land wind turbine in England.
I think let's just make sure we're ambitious with, I think, the opportunity and the scale of the opportunity that the local power plan is going to provide. It's huge investment. It's £1 billion, isn't it, in community projects up and down the country. Because what we've seen with Ambition Lawrence West, they've now got something that's generating income that they can then help to then deliver action in their local area and address issues around deprivation. So it's the very definition of community wealth building. So I just want us to make sure we're thinking about those opportunities that we can to try and bring more of those forward if we can.
Yes, community wealth building did come up consistently in all 3 community climate investment plans and is something that will be a focus. It just wasn't related to wind turbines.
Do we have any conclusions or comments on the report before we move forward towards the recommendations we've got in front of us? Councillor Weston.
Thank you very much, Chair. If we're on comments, from my perspective, I'm not going to be able to support tonight. I don't think it'll be a surprise for everyone. I think there's some really good bits, actually. I wouldn't say I'm with Tim and it's 99% support. But there are good bits. Park and ride on the M32 is a good thing. I do favour the new cycling centre, but that could be because it's moving closer to me and slightly further away from Tim. So we're nothing if not local politicians of the very capital LOCAL. I think the school streets work is very good. There's one coming in my ward. The freight consolidation infrastructure that we're talking about, we've been talking about that for about 15 years. It'd be great to really get that moving, pun unintended. Repair and use, there's a lot of good there. But fundamentally, I'm utterly opposed to the workplace parking levy. Now, this talks about exploring it rather than defining it, but I don't agree with that. I also don't agree with what we're doing on the Portway, the A418, or the South Bristol Livable Neighbourhood, and they're fairly big schemes in this. So I'm going to be abstaining on this vote. I can't back it today.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Disappointed to hear that, but anyone else got any conclusions before we move forward? Councillor Reynolds.
We will be supporting this today, but that doesn't mean that every single thing in there necessarily has our support, and individual decisions on South Bristol Livable Neighbourhood will come before the Transport Committee in, I think, September has been said. So, we'll scrutinise that at the time and make our decision on that. So I think what I wouldn't want is to assume that we are supportive of everything in it, but what I don't want is perfect to become the enemy of the good. I actually think there's a lot of brilliant stuff in here, and we do need to continue to do all that we can to address the climate emergency that we're facing. So we will support it, but I think it's just with that caveat around a couple of the things that are in it. And I think on workplace parking, it's just a general reference to it, make a decision rather than one way or the other.
And each time that happens, we nudge it closer to completion.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm at the Transport Committee.
Okay, I'm going to then come to the conclusion. And so did we have a final comment or question? Go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say thank you very much. Yeah, I'll also be supporting it, and also just wanted to give a shout out to the. I'm really pleased that we're going to be supporting the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. Yes, so yeah, I'm excited about that as well. Woohoo! Thank you.
Thanks very much. So the recommendations at the end of the report are that this committee for Environment and Sustainability notes the progress that has been made in the delivery of the City Council Climate Emergency Action Plan 2022-25 and the related reductions in council and city emissions of climate-changing greenhouse gases, and secondly, approves the adoption and publication of the Bristol City Council Climate Emergency Action Plan 2026-2028 to accelerate emissions reduction and improve the resilience of the city whilst delivering local jobs, lowering energy bills and cleaner air. So I'm proposing we move the report and the recommendations, hopefully two together, if you're happy. Is someone willing to second that? Councillor Finch. Oh, sorry, I saw Councillor Finch first. Okay, so we now vote on those two recommendations together. Those in favour of that, please raise your hand. Okay, so we have 8 members of the committee. Anyone oppose it? No. Anyone abstaining? 1 member of the committee, Councillor Weston. So that report has been approved. So I'm delighted to see the conclusion of all that work, and thank you for everything that has been done on it, and the excellent work done by our team and all our partners. So it's really good that we have ambition in the city and a near consensus for all the good work that needs to be done to tackle the climate emergency. And next time, maybe the Labour group will vote for the revenue funding for the team, which was in the recent budget that you didn't vote for. So on to the next item. We're now on to agenda item 8, which is the City Council Ecological Emergency Action Plan 2026-28. Also dropped off the agenda in December, but I'm glad it's come back to the committee today. So over to Cathy Derrick to present the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. I'm just going to give a quick outline, and then my colleague Kit, who developed the document with Sophie Peters, is got a short presentation, and then obviously would like to take any questions. So the context is that we have a one city ecological emergency strategy that was produced by city partners. This is about Bristol City Council's action plan, and this is the second version, because some people, not saying you do, but some people do get the two confused. But this is what the Bristol City Council is doing towards nature. So we've made two changes since the December version. One is we've added in an action on play pitches, was brought to our attention, and we've provided a lot more information on Nature Together, which is a new project that started on in January with lottery money. And also to note, and this relates to the request for approval, there are 4 elements to it. One is that the blue-green infrastructure strategy is coming to committee in March, and when some of those actions we want to integrate into this action plan. So in producing the actions, we've got a few less than the climate change action plan. I think we'll be nudging just over 70. And just to assure you that officers have liaised with all the owners of the previous actions in the action plan, and sort of co-created in a way these new actions, if there are new ones or others that need more time to get done. And I just think it shows quite what a range and how comprehensive the work is throughout all the council teams.
Thanks, Cathy. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to see the slides, but if not, they are in the report pack on page 147. That's where they start, if you've got them on your machines. So yeah, I guess just sort of like we're going to start talking about the highlights, I suppose, of the last plan, which ran from 2021 to 2025. And about 35% of those actions have now been completed, which is great. And I don't think there are, and I think there are maybe 1 or 2 actions within there that were unable to be taken forward, and the rest have been carried on into this plan or have been amended in some way to kind of make them relevant for future delivery. So some of the kind of key highlights from the previous plan, create 80 hectares of new wetland at Halland Marsh, which is great. If we can just go to slide 2. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, this is a really important bit of ecological mitigation. It's part of the flood defence work that's been happening in Avonmouth and as part of the Avonmouth and Sevenside enterprise area. So the newly developed wetlands are tailored to attract a variety of waders and ducks, and provides a new home for things like voles, newts, barn owls. And we will be continuing to manage that as we go forward. We've installed new floating ecosystems in the floating harbour. It's been really popular. I think they've been a real visual sort of, they've had a real visual impact and demonstration of kind of what we can do in an innovative way. We've so far installed a total of 700 square metres, which incorporates over 6,000 native plants, 24 trees, and it's just created a kind of really rich and diverse new habitat within the floating harbour. And, you know, there are actions within the action plan going forward to create more of these where possible. We've also secured funding, as you know, we heard about from the Climate Emergency Action Plan. A lot of this work does require external funding. You know, we are beholden to funders, whether that's local government or regional partners, or other kinds of giving. And that will be a factor going forwards as we look to diversify the way in which we fund this work. But two of the key bits of work that we have managed to secure funding for through the last action plan, and actually having the action plan itself is the evidence base, which is going to help to create that secure that funding. So it kind of really demonstrates the importance of having this stuff committed to paper. But we've got the £1 million of funding from the Combined Authority for the Green Recovery Fund, which is the Council's Managing for Nature project, which started in 2024 and will conclude this year, which is looking at trialling new ways of creating species-rich grassland around the city. That's being led by our colleagues in the Park Service. And more recently, we secured another £1 million from the UK-wide Nature Towns and Cities project, which is working with communities to co-design new processes to make it easier for them to take action for nature in their areas. So that project started about 6 weeks ago. So it's early days, but we will report on that as things go forwards. So the actions that are in there will help us deliver against kind of the key council performance indicators. So we've got space for nature, pesticide reduction, canopy cover, water quality, and resident action. And that's how they've been designed, and they're spread across a number of themes. So we've got communication and engagement, evidence, leadership and partnership, pesticides, space for nature, training, water quality, and wider footprint. And as Kathy said, you know, it really just shows the breadth of work that we're trying to do here. You know, not all of this work is funded now, but, you know, we've got a good track record of securing funding, and we'll continue to explore new ways of doing that. You know, some of that will be innovative, looking at new models where possible, and some will be reliant on kind of grant funding as we go forwards. Yeah, I think that's probably enough of a summary. We'll open it up for any questions.
Thanks very much, Kathy. Thanks, Kit. And yeah, we're delighted that the £1 million funding for Nature Together is a real success, sort of, to help invest in this sector, to make more happen. Any questions or sort of queries relating to the report to start with? Councillor Kent.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a question and a very brief statement. That way we speed things up if we get through. I'll do my brief statement first. Firstly, I mean, obviously this is a great report. Absolutely everything in it, I think I can be getting behind or very close to that. I want to really emphasise my concern about the quality of our rivers. The way Wessex Water just pumps sewage and uses our rivers as a toilet is a disgrace. They've got away with this now for decades. They happily take our money constantly when we pay our rates, our water rates, yet what do they do with our sewage? They just pour it into our rivers. And here we are. This is the Brislington Brook. Last week, I walked past that river. It was completely clear. 20 minutes later, it was turned into brown sludge by Wessex Water. That's not unique. I was about to say they do that every week. No, they do that now nearly every day. Hundreds of hours of sewage water is discharged into the Brislington Brook every year by Wessex Water, mostly from their storm overflow drains. It is simply unacceptable, and we need to do more. I really am pleased to see the talk about putting in some scoring for the health and quality of our rivers. Can we make sure, one, that that's robust, and two, how will we be involved in, when that comes forward, in basically being consulted about how robust that will be? Because for me, this is an issue now, it's gone on too long, and it's time we stomped down on these water companies, and if they're not willing to do it, we get rid of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. If you recall, after the Golden Motion about the rivers in Bristol, we referred that work to the One City Environment Board, because that's where these players, including Wessex Water, Bristol Water, take part, and we're shortly, I hope, going to get their report back from going through all the detailed resolutions in that Golden Motion that came through Council, and it will come back here as the sort of home in the Council for those issues. But I absolutely agree, we need to see cleaner rivers. And any other questions? Oh, Councillor Tate. Yeah.
Just a follow-on point, that there's actually some research being done by the University of Bristol at the moment, and a report's about to come out from how clean is Pigeon House Stream. As we know, up in Hartcliffe, you have the runoff right off from Dundry Slopes that go right through. So there is a presentation on the 12th of March. I'll send you the details, but it's just good to consider, and thank you very much for raising it about our rivers.
Just another point. In fact, we also sent a letter, signed by the Leader of the Council, myself, to the government as part of the resolution in the Golden Motion on rivers, and we've had a response, and we're just discussing whether we might, in fact, want to follow up to question some of that response. And I've also raised the certain matters of cross-border pollution coming into streams in Bristol, such as trim, I'm sure Councillor Weston knows, from construction in South Gloucestershire, and I've asked them if the environment leads for the 4 unitaries, when we meet together, can put issues about that cross-border construction-related pollution is silting up rivers and damaging their ecosystem. So it's on the table now, hopefully, for a discussion. Okay, Councillor Finch, and then Councillor Dutt.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I totally agree about rivers, and yeah, I think the only way to resolve it is that sort of joined up approach. So really glad that that's happening. Yeah, and hope to hear more about that soon. But the other point I was going to make was about tree planting. So I guess this sort of ties in with the One City Tree and Woodland strategy as well. And in that one, obviously, there were 3 wards that were identified as being particularly susceptible to extreme heat, and also that the plan is to double the tree canopy in those 3 wards, and one of them is my ward, St George Central. And in this report, it talks about, in this strategy, it talks about like that there being various sources of funding for trees, but I'm just aware that as a local councillor in my ward, that there often isn't funding available for tree planting, and I wondered whether there is any scope to sort of...
Today is one of the trees in Hartland Wood got vandalised. I think there perhaps is a communication piece missing around why the trees are going in, maybe working with some of the local groups on some of the tree planting so that it feels less done to and done with for the communities, just because otherwise, yeah, that tree is now vandalised, and obviously it costs quite a lot of money to plant a tree, and maybe that's not communicated out enough. So that's my only... I want to see loads of them everywhere, but I also want them to have the chance to survive.
Yeah, thank you. I'll feed that back.
Sure. Councillor Dutt?
Thanks. Can I just ask about the... because obviously it's referenced in their partnership working and community engagement. So we've got a really fantastic network of grassroots community groups in Bristol, wildlife groups like the BS3 wildlife group, the heart of BS13, isn't it? That look after Dundry. I used to have like regular meetings with these groups once a month, so I just wonder, as part of this, were they engaged throughout this process? And also, do those meetings still take place with those groups that are obviously continuing really valuable work in the city? So, because obviously you're the lead officer, so I assume you would know if those meetings are continuing.
Yeah, I mean, there's not any, as far as I'm aware at the moment, formal meetings between politicians and the wildlife groups, if that's what you're asking. Not to my knowledge, but, you know, Councillor Fodor might be able to respond.
Yes, I have a meeting, I think it's next week, with one of the representatives from BS3.
But yes, you know, we work with them all on a regular basis, you know, as officers, working in areas. Yeah, we're kind of the first point of contact, and, you know, the Nature Together project is a way in which hopefully we'll be able to improve those systems to make it easier for council officers and community groups to come together to kind of deal with or take nature action forward.
Yes, the sort of one front door, as it's been called, and the commitment to the I'm trying to read it out correctly. The route to get green space permits, it's now called. Is going to be useful.
But those regular meetings don't take place anymore.
I'm discussing it next week.
Okay, all right.
Sure. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Reynard and then Councillor Weston.
I've got two. One is a follow-up. Why has it taken so long for you to meet with the wildlife groups? Because I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and there seemed to be quite a bit of frustration about the lack of engagement from Green Party councillors, and it seems to be talked about in the weekly wildlife news update that I think we all receive as members of this committee. So I think it is disappointing about how long it's been taken. So why has it taken so long?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we've had to send quite a few clarifications to the group because I don't think they understand what the committee does, what other committees of the council do, and what the One City Environment Board do. But I'm sorting that out. Certainly, as I said, I've arranged a meeting. It's best that local ward councillors know what local groups are doing, and any problematic issues are tackled at the local or ward or area issue. But if we get any representations at committee, for instance, we try to act on them, such as the response from the Baydocks Wood group, which is a local group concerned about microplastic pollution. So that's been incorporated right now in the final version of the action plan before you. So that's the most important role we can play, is to make sure any concerns or obstacles are dealt with. But yeah. If meetings are useful, they can be held.
Well, yeah, I think it's quite important. I think particularly, we all have a leadership role, and, so you do as chair, the cabinet members, both Kai and Ellie, both regularly met with them. So it's disappointing there hasn't been that regular engagement, because I think that's how you build relationships is really, really important. So hopefully that will improve going forward. The other thing I just wanted to touch on was going back to the tree canopy and just sort of the challenges there. I think one of the things we're seeing is a challenge of identification of sites, particularly in sort of central areas of Bristol, and what other options there are, to try and do more. I tabled questions a little while ago about the Baltic Wharf development, which obviously had all its trees dropped down, but actually not very many sites have been identified for replacement trees, and the answer has just been, well, area committees will look at it. That's not enough. I want to see a bit more leadership on it. So what else can we do? How can we help as members of this committee with that as well?
Yeah, I think we'd need to get a response from our colleagues in Park Service who are leading on that directly, and we can make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Councillor Weston.
Thank you, Chair. I actually really like the report, which I know will be shocking to most colleagues here. Yeah, I know. I don't know what's coming over me. It's obviously my environmental roots. No, I think it's a good report. I think there are a few, should we say, caveats. I think when we talk about tree canopy, sometimes we go for the low-hanging fruit, again, pun unintended, where we think, oh, well, somewhere like Henry Brentry has a lot of green space, therefore we'll put all the trees up there. And then my residents start going, well, actually, we want to kick a football too. And I mean, it's about finding that balance. It was interesting, I think, what was raised earlier in one of the questions was otters. I think he gave a good response. But actually, we used to get otters in the Trim, and then South Gloss were building everything, and then that river became completely polluted. And then it goes through the brook and into the Trim. And we haven't seen the otters in ages. So I do think we need to, where possible, strengthen our neighbouring authorities' arm to enforce against those developers that then pour the pollution into our waters. I also would flag up that we do have strange portals on the brook which seem to be sewer connections or that no one owns or knows. Yeah, it's weird. I'll show you the pictures. They're bizarre. So they're not on Wessex Water's plan, they're not on our plans, and yet they're definitely there. Now, I love fantasy novels, and I can only imagine what's behind those doors, probably orcs or something. But I think we do need to sort of track our waterways a little bit better. But I think the report is excellent, and I'm looking forward to voting for it.
That's very, very good to hear. If there aren't any more questions, have we got any concluding remarks, or can we move to the recommendations in front of us? Let's do that. Okay. So thank you very much for addressing those. And I've flagged trees, finding place for trees and obstacles to that, and cross-border pollution, which I did already say we're trying to address with colleagues in the adjacent authorities. So the recommendations are that the Committee for Environment and Sustainability firstly notes the contribution which the Council has made to improving nature in the city through its delivery of the Bristol City Council Ecological Emergency Action Plan 2021 to 25. Secondly, approves the adoption and publication of the Bristol City Council Ecological Emergency Action Plan 2026 to 28 to continue and accelerate improvements in nature in Bristol. Thirdly, approves the development and trialling of a green space permit scheme as part of the Nature Together project. And fourthly, approves the future updates to the action plan from relevant approved strategies and work programmes, including the inclusion of actions arising from the Blue-Green Infrastructure Strategy. And that's what we heard is coming shortly. So I'm going to propose those, if we can take them together. Are we happy to do that? And do I have a seconder for that?
Second that.
Councillor Tate, thank you. So we've got those 4 recommendations in front of us. Those in favour, please vote. That is unanimous. So that report is approved. We'll publish the action plan 26 to 28. Thank you very much for all the work that's going on. And it crosses the whole council, but this is the summary, and we'll be following up and updating it and monitoring it. Thank you very much indeed for all that work. And it's really important because climate and nature together, which we've now covered tonight, are part of the corporate strategy priorities for ourselves, and one of the missions, the 4 missions of the One City partnership that we're part of. Okay. Do we want to take a short break before the 3 further items on the agenda? Shall we do that? A 5-minute break, comfort break, and then we've got 3 more items on the agenda. Thank you. resume the meeting after a very short break. Thanks very much, everyone. We've got 3 more items. Agenda item 9 now is the update on the Golden Motion and budget amendment regarding waste and recycling. Waste and recycling services, waste and fly time service. Thank you. Over to Pete Anderson for this.
Thanks, Chair. I'll summarise what is a very full report. So for the purposes of today was to provide you with a clear update on the progress that we've been making in relation to responding to not only the Golden Motion that was tabled and debated and agreed, but also the budget amendment at last year's budget relating to waste and waste services across the city. So there are in the paper there's reference to the 4 budget amendments as well as the 10 Golden Motion considerations that were agreed. As you'll see within the report, and be aware that the Golden Motion set out an ambitious and wide-ranging set of commitments, strengthening enforcement against fly tipping, improving reporting processes, exploring community-focused interventions, and ultimately aiming to create a cleaner neighbourhood across the city. The report does have a number of appendices, so it's very thorough in relation to evidence and evaluation, which we've been undertaking over several months, as well as the conversations and debates that we had in this chamber, but also through the Task and Finish group sessions. We've also included information in relation to fly tipping to some detail in terms of extracting information from Fix My Street and other databases that we hold to hopefully provide you with an accurate picture on what we do, where we do it, and the volume of fly tipping. The scale and challenges for Bristol and the UK are known, and the challenge to manage fly tips does provide opportunity as well as challenges. Within the appendix, it also refers to campaign we did in the year, Keep Britain Tidy local campaign, so it's delivering its findings, so hopefully that you'll find that useful. So over the past year, we've been evaluating to understand how these proposals and amendments that were put forward can be delivered effectively and sustainably. While we've seen genuine progress in areas such as data quality through Fix My Street, hotspot identification, and strengthening long-term strategy, we've also identified some operational constraints in relation to successfully implementing the amendments and motions. So we've tried to demonstrate to you the evidence and suggestions that leads us to the recommendations. So most of our focus has been on ensuring that we invest resources where they will deliver the greatest impact. For example, the evaluation shows that further capital investment in new CCTV cameras is not necessarily required at this stage. Instead, the priority to revenue funding to strengthen monitoring, redeployment, investigation capacity within the operations centre. This is a more effective and financially sustainable route to improving enforcement outcomes. Similarly, while increasing the littering fixed penalty notice has potential to support deterrence, evidence from other local authorities within the report and our own modelling shows that a large increase would likely reduce payment rates and create cost pressures. The recommendation on this is therefore to have a more proportionate rate of £175 with an early repayment of £100. We also recognise that the Golden Motion's ambition to reduce fly tip clearance times from 72 to 48 is important to communities. The recently approved council budget at full council early this month have now secured additional funding for the city for extra fly tip collection round, supporting progress towards this target. So the overall approach being taken has given us a much stronger foundation for long-term improvement. The work ahead will focus on strengthening operational capacity, improving behaviour change, maximising the use of data and ensuring our approach is financially sustainable. So there is a commitment to continue the Waste and Recycling Task and Finish Group, Phase 2 in 26, focusing on mitigation of fly tips through correct and appropriate waste disposal methods, e.g. bulky waste collections, household recycling centres and community interventions. So I'll direct you to the report, the recommendations share, and obviously answer questions. So the report does have a series of recommendations. I think there's 5 that hopefully relate to what I've just described, and hopefully we'll be able to answer questions. Back to you, Chair.
Thanks very much indeed. And that's good, helpful summary and some key issues that that highlight where we're going sort of now. And I have to say, I think in my 11.5 years as a councillor, this is the most detailed and well-researched and sort of well-evidenced summary of everything that can be done around fly tipping and what works and also what doesn't work so well. And it's really valuable. So I hope actually we can turn this to some sort of briefing for all councillors and maybe more widely to say what's being done to prevent fly tipping, to clear fly tipping, to identify offenders, to tackle waste criminals, to give people the right messages of what to do well, how to avoid waste criminals and so on. So it's a really useful piece of work, and I know it's taken a while, but I think we've got something that's been well worth waiting for since the Golden Motion and then the budget last year's. And this year, we've been able to then put money in the budget to tackle some of these things like more fly tipping clearance and more enforcement and monitoring. So we've got the report. It covers all of those issues from both the Golden Motion and budget amendment. Do we have any questions or issues arising from the report? Councillor Crawford, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks everyone for bringing this report. Obviously, this is a very big topic at the moment nationally as well as locally. I've just got 2 or 3 questions. My first one is kind of talking about trying to increase resource in the operations centre. Is that going to be resource that is dedicated to looking at fly tipping, or is it going to be just increased staffing that will be looking at everything else that's going on in the operations centre?
So it's creating a resource to look at fly tipping within the command centre. It's the clarity is whether it's one person or there is dedicated time across a suite of people that then the enforcement team can report to and raise to look proactively for the opportunity to identify perpetrators when fly tipping's occurred.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And the other question I want to say, I understand that, you know, it's not necessarily good enough to invest in a capital. It's a bit like, you know, public toilets in a way. You can't just build 100 toilets. You also need to maintain them, unlock them, clean them and whatnot. So I understand that there's an operational cost to that. What I was wondering, and I think it was a point in one of the first pages, is the enforcement teams are also using camera traps as well. These seem to be a lot less onerous in terms of the install, the maintenance and relocating. I was wondering if you could explain why those have been excluded from basically consideration of further capital investment.
So camera traps are deployable in certain circumstances, and there's a whole lot of rules and regulations about where you put cameras, where they point, and that sort of thing, and recording people. So we have to be really considerate of that sort of guidance and framework. We have 4 within the team, and actually we've got external funding for another 12, so there will be 16 by the start of the next financial year. When we looked at the £150,000, the camera traps are going to cost £1,000 or £2,000, and we weren't looking at that using that. It was more for the CCTV is the way we were looking at it. So that resource is getting bolstered.
Okay, and I just have one more question as well. Yeah, so we're obviously talking a lot about kind of catching our fly tippers as well. And I think it was quite good to see that there's new guidance that was released yesterday, I think, and there was a story with South Gloucestershire neighbours about it. But obviously we're playing whack-a-mole here with our fly tippers, and I was wondering if you could kind of outline whether that guidance is going to have any effect on actually reducing the problem at source, rather than just endlessly kind of pursuing the fly tippers after the fly tip's taken place.
So I need to get up to speed with the guidance update, but fly tipping there's lots of different ways, and I think that was aimed more towards the crushing of vehicles and organised fly tipping by illegal traders, that sort of thing. And one thing the team reported today, actually, they have seized a fly tipper with the police and his vehicle. So, you know, we are actively undertaking that sort of work. But fly tipping, when you look at the number of reports, it's not all big fly tipping. Fly tipping is someone putting waste on the street or a tyre or anything that shouldn't be there, really. And so when we look at the number of reports, you need to look at all of that. And so we will look to use the guidance. We will look to get tougher on that organised fly tipping. We want to this year raise people's understanding about the thing, because people don't understand that they have a duty of care when they get a waste company in to take their waste away. They should be looking to see if it has a waste management licence, to make sure it's properly regulated and all of that sort of thing. And some of these illegal fly tippers that are traders actually don't even have car insurance. So, you know, so we need to start at that, and then we need to move up to encourage people to report, and also, like, generally, what is accepted behaviour in Bristol, not to fly tip, not to leave waste around, and to have care for your community.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure, thanks. And sort of just to note, we work with Bristol Waste and Keep Britain Tidy on the fly tipping publicity fortnight, and that campaign was so successful. Bristol, ourselves and Bristol Waste featured on Channel 5 TV, Channel 4 TV, BBC Breakfast Radio, local press. I saw people in local social media quoting the fact they now know they're meant to ask for a waste carrier's licence and a receipt, which is just one part of the jigsaw in preventing the fly tipping, if we can prevent more of it so that there's less of it, by people knowing the right way to dispose of waste. And our own services and facilities got publicity as well. So I've got Councillor Weston, and yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. I suspect the Labour colleagues will come back with some comments in a minute. I wouldn't say necessarily, Chair, that we were that successful, because fly tipping is still blighting us everywhere. So, and I'm not sure the message really went through, because actually the people that would watch the programme probably would follow the rules, but it's the people that didn't watch the programme are the ones that almost certainly, you know, they wouldn't. I confess to have a slight amount of exasperation. I was reading the report, and it was saying that we have a lot of CCTV cameras and everything else. Well, forgive me, it's the same areas in my ward that get fly tipped all the time, and neighbouring wards, and I've never seen a camera try and catch it. And I can list you the half dozen places that they get hit again and again and again, and we clear them, and then they get hit again and again and again, and it just doesn't seem to work. And the bit that I'm finding quite annoyed, and it's not perhaps directed at people here, because I understand the work's gone into this report, is why the chuffing hell haven't HRA signed a deal to clear fly tip from housing bloody land? This can't go on. I know the quote is from the waste company, and it's with them. I know they've got that. They must spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands clearing the fly tip. But what seems to happen now is there's a fly tip, and then they do sweet nothing about it, and that fly tip little molehill becomes a mountain. And I've seen this in my ward at the end of Marmion Crescent Station Road, where you could have picked it up quite easily in the back of a car and cleared it. And in the end, we had to send a truck with a crane and a grabber because it had grown so much. And it grew so much over about a month when we didn't put a camera trap that kept getting the builder that kept dropping it off. I've got photos of the van that did it. They've been sent in. I don't think anything's happened with it. So I'm afraid from my perspective, although I take that some activity has gone, and I agree with the increasing the FPN and all the rest of it, that there is so little that my residents I could point to and say, oh yeah, we've improved things in this. Because it's still happening. We're not catching the right people. They're fly tipping in the same place, and the HRA need to pull their finger out. Because quite frankly, it's just annoying.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. Working with our own housing service has been a priority. It has gone on. You're right. What we now need is to get the signature so that they adopt the same standards and arrangements that the rest of the council does, and sometimes the park service too. So we've been prioritising it, and Ken will tell us more about it. But it has been frustrating.
So specification for the new HRA service has been agreed and the SLA has been drafted and it's just been finalised with the anticipation that it will be emptied in the early start of next year. Next financial year, yeah. So the things will change soon, and with the funding of the third flight it removal vehicle, you know, we're going to be able to remove waste on different types of land that the council owned, alongside the HRA addressing the issue. So we should see, hopefully, the response time drop from 72 to 48 and not have the issues where it's not on certain land. The proviso is slightly different, is parks is separate, because going into parks with Bristol Waste vehicles and digging it up, which we've experienced in the past, isn't it? So, but the Fix My Street is getting aligned and sorted as well to be able to cope with that. So there should be, or will be, change in early in April and May of this coming year. So I understand your frustration, and things will change.
Yeah, much appreciated. So yeah, we've been waiting for this. Hopefully it will happen on schedule, and that will be a great relief to all of us and residents, obviously, but also councillors who have to try and find out why things haven't been cleared. I've got Councillor Dudd first.
Yeah, thank you. I've just I've got a bit of a concern with this around the democracy around this, because obviously there was a resolution of council not so long ago to put the littering fines up to the maximum, and that's not happened here. So I've just got how has that been allowed to happen? Because surely we're in charge of the policy of the council, not officers. So how have we gone from a position where there's a resolution of council to put the fines up to £250? When was that? 18 months ago? I can't remember the exact date, and it's not happened. So I worry about the democratic process, and you know, is it even worth us turning up if we carry resolutions and it's not followed?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
If you complete that item. Yeah, of course. And we have just had an explanation of the recommendation of officers who have the professional expertise to find out what is likely to happen if we do that. And if what's likely to happen is adverse, then we should listen to the professionals as well. I totally understand. We've expressed a will to do something. Council did. They brought it to this committee, just like the budget amendment, and we've now had advice and research.
So what I would say to that is I agree with the research, what Ken's pulled together. I don't think it's wrong. But you might have a different motivation to putting the fine up to £250. So Ken's point of view is around the revenue it would generate, and I kind of accept that. But I think the whole point of putting fines up to the maximum level was to send a message about the council's position on how we view littering, that we're going to have the highest fine possible. So it's more about I'm less worried about the revenue. I'm more worried about the message that we're sending, that we, under the power that the government has given us, we're doing the maximum that we can. Now, there might be other people on this committee that disagree with that, and the revenue's more important, or actually they think the fines are too high. That's fine, but we've had a resolution of council that settled that issue, and it's not been carried out by officers.
We'll ask Ken Lawson to address that. But of course, it's the outcome that really matters to our residents, isn't it? But let's hear what he has to say.
So it was a budget amendment, and it was a budget amendment to raise fines to fund additional services. Now, we went back, and we can't raise fines to fund separate additional services because it gets conflicted if you directly link the two, and therefore we can't do it as a council. Also, a budget amendment still required, I was still required to come back to committee to formally sign off the increase of the fixed penalty notices, because the budget amendment doesn't take into consideration the legal and the financial. It's just a budget amendment. So there was still a need to come back to you. Admittedly, it has been late in the year, and apologies for that. We have worked a lot on waste, and this was along with the other bits, the golden motion, it's all sort of interlinked, and it all hinged on the decisions that were made in December. So this is the first committee following December that we could bring the golden motion, which a lot of it was linked to the 3 weekly, 4 weekly, no, yes, and to the budget amendment. So that's why it's come at this point.
Thank you for that.
And then my second question away from that is just on the publicity that the strategy around publicity when we find people for fly tipping or crushed vehicles. I think I've got a little bit of a perception that maybe it appears when you look at the press around fly tipping and penalties issued, a lot of it seems to come in the local papers. A lot of it seems to be generated from South Gloucestershire. So I just wondered, do they have a different communications protocol around sort of naming and shaming? So I think a big part, I accept what you say around, is a fine a deterrent, but we all know that the likelihood that you get caught is probably the biggest deterrent. And if we're not publicising when people are caught and naming and shaming, I think we're missing the trick there in terms of a deterrent. And it seems that South Gloucestershire are on a better footing than us in terms of their publicity strategy around enforcement. I might be wrong there.
No, I think it's probably something that is been a frustration for the team. You know Kurt James, you know how well he likes to engage and promote stuff. But since when you were our cabinet member, getting the bandwidth within the BCC publicity machine has been a challenge around the successes we've had with enforcement. That is something that we're welcome to have more support to publicise when we crush vehicles or fine. So it's a valid point.
Yeah, thanks. And just to remind members, I mean, for the second time, I think we've had during this committee's cycle, we've had news from our street scene and enforcement people about a whole list of things that have been enforced. You're right, it doesn't always get in the news, but they have been busy, and we all got a summary of that not long ago. Okay, I've got Councillor Kent and then Councillor Tate, I think.
Thanks. I'll try and be quick. So reading through the fines, I think one of the problems we face, probably the country faces, is the small fines that we're allowed to impose on fly tippers. So the national maximum is £1,000. Thanks for that, for the report. And obviously if they pay quickly, that's discounted to £500. But if you're a commercial fly tipper, you make that every day. You probably make more than that. And as we know, the odds of catching someone are low. We recognise that in the report. I think that's what I like, the fact we're going to try to do more to catch people, because that's going to be the real deterrent. But we have a problem. If we catch them and we're only fining them £1,000 or £500, that's still not a deterrent if you're a commercial fly tipper. I know we can potentially seize their vehicles. I've seen some of these vehicles. They're not of high value. We got a guy in my ward because he stupidly went around with a telephone number on the side of the van as he fly tipped. He wasn't the brightest spark, it has to be said. And we did fine him. But £500 was nothing compared to over 3 weeks. I saw photos of this guy fly tipping in Hartcliffe, Hengrove, Whitchurch.
He's laughing at us.
About a dozen times, about 3 years ago in his white van. I even chased him around Hartcliffe one morning, and then he started chasing me. That was quite a fun moment. And then I confronted him in his van, and I had to call the police on that one.
He was probably on his way to Dundry.
And unfortunately, he was one of my residents as well. I can't blame anyone else. He was a Whitchurch resident.
You lost the vote.
Oh, sorry, he's not voting for me. That is very true. So we need to do more to catch them, because I think we do recognise we're not getting enough convictions. But I think we also need to lobby government over the fine, especially, I've got to say, for someone who's doing this for commercial gain. I mean, I think it is totally unacceptable to fly tip, but there's a difference when you catch someone throwing one thing away and another thing where someone's been paid 200 quid, drives it down the back alley and dumps it there and then goes on to pick up their next load. So I think that's the thing we need to push government on. Good news about housing. That's great, Ken, because we've been pushing hard on that, and that's great news. But we also need every department to be working equally, including parks. I get what you mean about the vehicles. In fact, actually, ironically, it would be very useful on occasion if we could use parks vehicles to sometimes get to some of because some of the parks in my ward are housing land. So they're parks, but they're owned by the housing department. So that particularly makes things difficult. A lot of our open space is technically housing land. But making sure that we can get those cleared fast will make a real difference, because so far it's an absolute catastrophe when the housing department have been involved. But finally, and you know I'm going to raise this, the service at the moment is still just unacceptable. This is Brierley. So it's another photo for you all. This was taken, I think, this morning by one of my residents. That's been sitting there for 3 weeks now. That area gets fly tipped every week. That same spot every week. And the community even did a petition asking for cameras to go in there. So again, if I can ask that we consider trying to put some mobile cameras. I know there are issues in doing that, but on Briery Lees to try to stop this constant fly tipping. And you'll be pleased to know I've just emailed you that photograph. And I know, because I know what a good officer you are, that will probably be cleared within hours. I know you'll probably be out there yourself getting it done. Anyway, thanks, Ken.
On the maximum fine, if we do have a perpetrator like you're talking about, then we will look to prosecute, and it then links to the link criminal damage that they cause. So I mean,
just to say, the guy I caught and actually gave a proper witness statement against, he got away with his £500 fine. Admittedly, he did go to prison a month later for other offences, but...
Probably because the van didn't have any insurance.
Okay, thanks for raising that. And yeah, important issue. We can't do it alone. If fines could be changed, that might help. Councillor Tate.
I just wanted to obviously raise that after the announcement yesterday, the government's making around 78 billion available to council budgets in England this year as part of the first multi-year funding settlement in over a decade to help fund key responsibilities like fly tipping. And so obviously that's really good news for us in Bristol, and I think it comes at a right time while we are looking at, we do have the Golden Motion and we are looking at implementing this. And I suppose I just wanted to echo quite a few people's points to just say that we are aware, our communities know, our communities are fed up. You've just heard today from a community that called themselves in crisis. It's a waste crisis and it feels like slums. And actually, for a lot of those communities, we've just talked about the cowboys. They're the ones that are preying on the communities, whether that be dumping outside of non-standard collection points because they know that they can get away with it there, or up on our green spaces. And so, yes, I would also echo that I'd like a crackdown on the cowboys.
Thank you for that. Councillor Reynard.
I'll save my general comments for after and just deal with questions first. But the first thing I'm really interested in understanding is the evaluation of the existing asset base. I found that, because you talk about, so if it found that capability is required rather than additional cameras, I'd argue it's both. So I'd be quite interested to understand how you've assessed you don't need more cameras, particularly given other feedback that's been raised this evening.
So I suppose the recommendations based on like the impact on our budget. So the capital of 150 is great, but the cost of a mobile camera is about nearly £15,000 over 2 years, and then every time you move them, it's £1,000 to £1,500. So we're going to have resource to use the existing fleet of 500 fixed CCTV cameras. The team itself has 7 deployable cameras, CCTV cameras that can be fixed to lampposts. So we need to maximise the benefit of those. And if we were to spend the £150,000, I would need the revenue funding for those other bits in future budgets. So I don't want to buy cameras that I then can't afford to move around or have connected to 4G.
Sure, but what you've said in this report is the evaluation found that further capital investment in new cameras is unnecessary. That's something. What you've just described is something very different, because you're saying they're not necessary at all.
Right. Okay.
In the report.
Right.
So which is it?
Well, I would say I would say my description now is probably clearer than the necessary. So I've probably been a bit succinct with my.
So you accept that additional CCTV cameras are necessary, but your question is then where the revenue funding comes from to ensure they can run.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Which the Green administration could have sorted in the budget with all the extra money it was given by the Labour government, of course. I think wanted to just touch on HRA. The thing I remember about the HRA from years ago as well was when, and you'll like this one, Mark, the operations department tried to charge the HRA for broken cameras that it was going to monitor. I'm very interested in the idea of how you monitor broken cameras, but I'm glad we've moved on from those days. I think my other question, which is the question, and I'll save statements for later, is residents, they don't really care what type of land it's on, right? They just want it sorted. So how are we going to ensure that we do provide like a truly one-stop shop for addressing fly tipping, rather than us getting a response from whether it's Bristol Waste, whether it's enforcement, or it's on this type of land, so therefore we can't do anything about it? Like, how are we going to make sure that we truly get a grip of that issue, so that doesn't carry on? Because when we go back to our residents and they go to them, oh, sorry, it's not on X type of land, and they can't do anything about it, like, they don't really like that response, as you'd appreciate.
So what I would say is that we are going to have a HRA resource that will focus on the HRA estate, because it's large, and we have the additional vehicle that's funded through the budget to redeploy back onto our normal business as usual fly tip removal. And then what we're doing is we are having a policy within the council internally about we'll clear all fly tips, but then we'll hold different landowners responsible within the council for removing fly tips from their land, because some of it should be made secure at the point that it's left vacant. Some of it is their asset, and we will try to manage it that way. So we're going to try and harmonise the two response rates between the HRA and the business as usual, as we call it, to roughly the same time. And so it will be a one-stop shop, because at the moment, in the last year, we've moved all fly tip reporting onto the Fix My Street. So it's the same on parks, it's the same on the HRA, it's the same here. The titles will disappear, and we'll have a more common response.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because we've basically joined up the way of reporting it. We've joined up the council response, which is hopefully imminent, with the signature of the HRA, and we've put back the fly tip crew that can help clear it, which was taken out when you were in Cabinet, and which we put in a resource in the budget to monitor the cameras, so we can actually spot what's going on.
Thanks
so
to the Labour government, Councillor Fodor, because I did read your quote from earlier. We had a very terrible time under the Tory years with our funding getting cut.
That's all right, but and we've moved on.
And, what I do notice with yourselves as a Green Party, very quick to criticise things and blame Labour for things, except when the good stuff happens, that is as a result of national government funding that's improved your position substantially, 161.3 million over the next few years.
Just over 3%, which some of which is invested in our services. So I hope we're very pleased with
30.2% over the next 4 years. Can we have the evaluation, please, that was carried out about the cameras?
Sorry, what was that?
The evaluation that said capital investment in new cameras is unnecessary. Could we have a copy of the evaluation? If there's a written one down.
There isn't a written one. So it was an assessment looking at what we have, looking at the estate, and what's in the report is there. So
okay.
Okay, thanks. Are there other questions, or can we move on to the conclusions and the recommendations? Does anyone want to say something now? I don't see any hands raised. Does that mean we can move on to the recommendations for the report?
I think we've got the debate to have.
I've just asked if there are any comments.
Come back in.
So, well, let's press on. Please do.
Thank you. I think myself and Labour colleagues are really unhappy with this report. I think we recognise a lot of work's gone into it, but it's taken a year and basically amounts to computer says no on most of what was put forward. And it seems to be that we find ourselves in a democracy when it suits situation. It's been a year. We've now got this report that isn't going to really do anything, isn't going to address some of the issues that our residents keep raising with us. New CCTV cameras are clearly needed. You know, I can think of 2 places in my ward, Monks Park, at the moment, where there's regular fly tipping going on, and then the one that I report almost weekly on Eden Grove, where there's repeated fly tipping, which has been in national and local media. Residents want to see it addressed, obviously want the fly tips clear, but all of us would rather it didn't happen in the first place. And, you know, this was us constructively participating in the committee system, putting forward a motion that I think all parties voted for. The budget amendment also got huge support from most parties, not the Greens, it has to be said. And, you know, I was in a transport committee not too long ago, and there was comments made about respecting democratic decisions when they're made in reference to the East Bristol livable neighbourhood, and that one went as far as forcing a scheme on a community that didn't want it at 4 a.m. in the morning with police, private security and drones. So, you know, it does seem to be a bit, when it suits, your position seems to change. Or we really need to think about, when other parties bring stuff forward, that more effort is made to implement what we put forward. And it's really disappointing that after a year, there's been very little engagement with us about some of the challenges that we've faced prior to bringing it here. And I just quite frankly think it's disgusting, the way that this has been done, and it's not what we were meant to have under this committee system. So I hope lessons will be learned and there'll be better engagement in future on these reports. We'd ask that the recommendations are taken separately, because we're not supporting recommendation 2.
Councillor Weston.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to take a slightly different tone on this one, if that's all right. I'm broadly happy with the report. I do think we need more CCTV, but although democracy is important, I think we also recognise fiscal rules on this one. And in order to actually make use of the capital investment in CCTV, there needs to be revenue that goes on with it. So my concern now is I don't want to firmly close the door of not drawing down capital fund, because I do think more CCTV is better. But I think we also have to recognise that there is a drawback in the fact we can't actually run the cameras. So there's no point buying cameras if they're then going to just be dusty. So I accept that. So from my point of view, I think I probably would like the votes separately, because number 2 I don't agree with, but equally I think that one should more be paused as we look at whether and ways in which we might be able to look at additional cameras. But the rest of it I'm content with. I do think possibly this is a lesson to all of us when we do budget amendments, is that if we're spending on capital, we also have to recognise there's revenue as well. And I'm as guilty of that when I put my amendments through. I mean, I know you guys love my budget amendments all the time, positively cooing at them. But I think there's a drawback on that budget amendment that we've now exposed. And I love your speeches every year. So separate votes, please, if that's okay. Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Weston. I think in the budget speech, I did point out that capital without revenue meant they wouldn't be able to be operated.
It's the same with the waste fleet.
So, Councillor Finch.
Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't that different a point from Mark's point, actually, which I was surprised by. But yeah, I guess I do think that, you know, I'm really, really pleased that we're going to be doing, like, speeding up the fly tip collection with the new vehicle, and also with joining up with HRA Land as well. I think that's really important. But yeah, I do agree that enforcement is in some ways more important to sort of tackle the root issue. And I think it's great that we're going to be getting the resource there to be able to use those cameras more for enforcement. But yeah, that you know, similar to other councillors here, there are spots in my ward that are hotspots that don't have cameras. So yeah, I want us to spend money wisely. So, you know, I'm hearing that this isn't a wise use of money because it doesn't have the revenue that goes along with it. But yeah, what I'm definitely hearing from today that it's not that those more CCTV is not needed, and I do hope that in future that is something, you know, coming up with a plan that involves the capital and the revenue that's needed is taken forward. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Anyone else have anything to add? Yeah, Councillor Ross.
Yeah, it's just to note really, I was going to say, when talking about fly tipping and waste, I think it's important that we recognise the throwaway culture that has kind of cultivated this, and how important repair and reuse is, which has been mentioned a couple of times in the report. But yeah, I know that we've got a task and finish group coming up that's going to look at repair within the city and how we can work with community organisations, and that will be a really important piece.
Thanks for reminding us of that. Councillor Kent.
Just very briefly, of course, only last week, everybody else on this committee voted down £150,000 of extra revenue money to tackle fly tipping, which was sitting there totally unused. But let's move to the vote, Chair.
Oh, sorry, pressed the wrong button. Yeah, let's move to the recommendations. We have 5 relating to this report. I'll read them out and we can take them separately if that's what colleagues would like to do. So the Committee for Environment and Sustainability, looking at the budget amendment, firstly, approve officer recommendation to increase the fixed penalty notice to £175 and early repayment of £100. Secondly, approve officers will not be drawing down from the capital fund to fund more CCTV units. Thirdly, note that the council budget has funded resource within CCTV Operations Centre rather than drawing down the £150,000 for new CCTV cameras. Fourthly, note that the council budget is funding an additional fly tip removal round. And relating to the Golden Motion, the 5th recommendation, note progress made against the Golden Motion. So those are 5. Can I have a seconder that we are going to receive those for a vote? Thank you, Councillor Kent. We can do that separately. So can we now vote on? That's been seconded. So move on recommendation 1. Those in favour of recommendation 1. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Recommendation 2. Those in favour of recommendation 2. That is 5 members of committee. You can see the name all along front. Against recommendation 2, 3 members of committee, Labour Group, and abstain, Councillor Weston. So that has been approved. Thirdly, recommendation 3. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, for noting. We just note it. Are we happy to note those all 3, 4 and 5? So we're all agreed to note them. Thank you. So that completes that item. Thank you very much. It's been a really thorough investigation and report and debate. I'm glad all those issues have been aired, and I do hope we will improve the situation for our residents, which is the most important of all. Thank you. So moving on to agenda item 10, the quarterly performance report, quarter 2 of the year 25 to 26.
Yeah.
Over to
Thanks, Chair. So this is a retrospective report in the same vein as we've previously presented, and in also the same format. So this is quarter 2, which would be ending the end of September. So the report provides you with the background and the links to the current KPIs and dashboards, a link to the committee. And the report pulls out significant points of good performance, but also areas to improve. We've also included in the report, and I'll draw your attention to it in a moment, regarding the performance of the operational delivery collection service during the Christmas period in relation to Bristol Waste delivery. Which is good news to report. But we know that the challenges of fly tipping is a challenge for us in terms of the numbers that are being reported, which I'll refer to. In the context of highlighting it from in the report good performance, the continuation of citizens participating in community clear-ups continues to be positive in the terms of the volume, and Kurt James in Ken's service continues to coordinate that activity with the team, and the take-up is still positive, so there's some really good news there that we will continue to promote and support. There's reference to the proportion of ICE vehicles being replaced for EV in relation to vehicles. Now there is currently 18 vehicles to expect an increase of up to 29 vehicles across the fleet. So we continue to do vehicle replacement on our fleet, and based on the current target for this year, that is delivering well.
Reliability.
Yes, yeah. In relation to EV charge points, we've referenced the new lamppost charges going in, further to Department of Transport funding that came to us, and that continuation of EV charging point delivery will continue into the remainder of this year, but into next year through to the increase of destination charges as well as community charges. And we're currently working with the Combined Authority in relation to the government's local EV infrastructure fund that will hopefully bring more in the pipeline. But it's great to see the lamppost charging project move forward. And under section 2.5, in terms of improvement, we know that our starting position this year and our performance, or Bristol Waste performance for the early on in the year was poor in relation to drop roads miscollections for the reasons we know, I think, through task and finish and through previous committees. So they're currently off target based on the start of the year, but we know operational performance has significantly improved. Fly tipping in relation to percentage is off target with a target of 90, and we're currently hitting 82%. And in reference to action 5.1.2 in the report in relation to the council's most carbon emitting buildings, that's our top 30 buildings that we have got a firm commitment through the delivery of City Leap projects to replace old heating systems, focus on installation and improve retrofits. So those projects will continue through the pipeline of projects that will be brought to life through the business plan for Bristol City Leap, and that will be agreed in March moving forward, and that will be supported through the council's decarbonisation capital fund that I'll refer to in the next report in relation to the profile of how that money is going to be spent on some of our big carbon emitting buildings. So 2.6 and 2.7 just provide you a focused view of the performance over the December and early January period for our household collections, and you'll see there's been a significant reduction on complaints received, missed roads and drop roads, which is really pleasing to see. Myself and Ken, as the operational and strategic client role with Bristol Waste, we're keen to engage early and to plan early with Bristol Waste. You'll see that captured in the bullet points at the bottom of page 421 in terms of what Bristol Waste put into place in terms of preparation and planning. And the graphs under 2.8 and 2.9, I think it is, highlight in terms of the very, very low level of drop roads for recycling and refuge, but where we were compared to last year. Thank you.
Thanks very much for a good summary of the report, and some really important sort of points to highlight where things have got better, where we need to keep pressing for them to be improved, and some of the successes. That holiday planning was very thorough, and the dramatic fall from thousands of drop roads to a handful of drop roads in most cases was, I think really appreciated by everyone. So thank you for that. Are there any questions about the performance report? Councillor Reynard.
Just on the drop roads issue that's been highlighted, 'cause the one that obviously seems to be way off. Where do you expect to be by the year end?
I think we'll still be off target because of how poor the performance was early in the year and the need to turn it around, clearly. So the expectation is performance will continue to remain very good during January, February, March. Clearly, we track that on a monthly basis, and obviously it's a daily basis review with Bristol Waste. So I don't think we'll hit it, but I don't think we'll be too far away. In terms, I think what's important is also a future view is what is the target that we set for next year. The investment and the attention to vehicles in relation to ensuring that we can get the vehicles in a condition and the way that they don't fail, either at the depot or actually en route, has been. I think we've seen the benefit in that because we've had fewer vehicle issues, so they've been able to complete the rounds. So we haven't needed also to therefore bring in extra rounds or weekend rounds or early evening rounds. So my expectation is the trend will be down. I don't think we'll meet it, but in terms of being very realistic about the expectation of drop roads going into next year.
Thanks for that. I mean, yeah, when it first came to the committee, the state of the service was dire, and we identified all of the issues that needed addressed. I was frankly shocked to hear there was no routine maintenance, no preventive maintenance happening up till that point, which we've restored, and then hopefully new vehicles, also more processing capacity, so vehicles aren't tied up, and so on. So it's improving, but obviously still needs to be sort of tightened up. And I was on Bristol Radio this morning, spent 50 minutes on John Darville's show, and some people are happy with their service, but others are quite rightly concerned when things get missed, and we know we need to attend to that.
So one further question. So I noticed that recycling is also slightly down in the appendix, so tier 1 performance metric section. So just wondered what's driving the drop-off in the recycle. I appreciate it might only be slight, but it'd be interesting to just understand why it's reducing.
Can I refer to Ken?
I think it's a bit like we discussed in December. Since about 2018, we haven't had any education campaigns around recycling. So the service has peaked at about 47% 2019, and it's just sort of plateaued. And the simpler recycling, the container refresh that you all voted to support in December, that when we do that bit of activity this year, plus the additional education campaign to support that, we're going to hopefully start to see the recycling rate tick up. There are probably several factors other than just the lack of a large-scale change and a large-scale communications campaign.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yes, and with the budget supporting that outreach and the container refresh and so on, let's hope people are. And the uptake of more food waste recycling as well, because there's too much in bins that can be recycled. Okay. Is there any other question? I think just Councillor Weston, and then we'll come to Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, thank you. I find the report really useful, and there's really good news in there. Personally, I think the drop road performance is fantastic. A couple of Christmases ago, it was an absolute nightmare, and it has noticeably improved. You still get the odd one or two, but we sort of expect that. My inbox has stopped crying on a Saturday morning, so that's always good. I just had a couple of quick questions. Point 2.4, we say the number of citizens participating in community clear-ups per quarter, and we're above target. Are we higher than we were the year before? I'm just wondering if we're raising our target, if we kept the same target for like year after year, and actually we probably should nudge it up a bit.
I'd have to check. Ken, I don't know if you know. I'll have to check.
I'm happy to take it offline. That's a curiosity from my point of view.
Yeah, I was just going to say I need to come back to you on that.
Okay. And just in the metrics, I think it's GR549. Got to go to Specsavers. Where we've got the arrow saying things are down, but the commentary says there's been a slight reduction in household waste, which is good. So we seem to it's got worse, but also got better. I'm not quite sure where that leads. I can point to the thing if it helps. So GR 549, reduce household waste. It's green, so above target. Great. The arrow's pointing down, so apparently it's got worse, but the commentary says it's got better.
It says slight reduction in household waste arising.
Which is good.
Yeah.
But the arrow says it's getting worse.
So to clarify it, I suppose the target, we're slightly off the target. Well, actually,
no, it's green.
No,
we're theoretically on target.
I'm not.
It's good, but not as good as it could be.
Yeah.
We'll take that away because
just let me know which way it is, because it looks good news, and I think we should be happy. But the arrow says it's anyway. If you could, but otherwise, happy with the report, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think the band, it's within the band, but it could be better. But we will check that. Yeah, we want it to be clear. Was there any other question? Oh yeah, Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, thanks. I've got just two quick questions. They relate to 5.1.1, which is the heat network expansion. So they're kind of interconnected questions. The first is that my understanding was that on our forward plan, we've had a key decision relating to decarbonisation of this building and the Bristol Central Library. I know it's probably a relatively small emission in terms of the grand scheme of what we are expecting and hoping of the heat network to achieve, but I was just wondering basically if there's an update on why, because I kind of thought we were expecting that in mid to late 2025. And then just added to that as well, will we be seeing a report relating to, I can't quite remember the specific name, but the new heat zone thing, which I think I will give credit to Labour government. You're welcome, Tom. Does seem like quite a good kind of scheme and a good policy that could be really, really positive for us, especially with a fairly established heat network at this point. But will a report on that be coming?
Certainly, it is in the pipeline, dare I say. But it's a piece of work that's been emerging for a good many years. It's finally coming through, and we're lucky that we will be one of the advanced cities, the first adopters of the new zoning power, and there will have to be a zoning body, and we have a report coming on that. The specifics for this building and College Green is that it is in the plan of the construction of the network, but it hasn't reached here yet, and it will be taking a little while to build its way in this direction. So that will come separately, and that is in the forward plan as well. Okay. But the heat network zone early adoption by this city is something we will have the report and the opportunity to back that imminently.
Okay. And so we'll still be getting a key report relating to decarbonising this building as well? Or?
In the future, yes.
Yeah, City Hall and Central Library are still the two core buildings that will be connected first to the heat network when it reaches. So at the last year's business plan, there was a change from the delivery of the network, which focusing on the build out from the city centre rather than strategic heat main coming down the north. But that was built into the city business plan. Yeah. So there has been growth and there has been increased connections. But in the context of the network to reach here, has taken time and it has moved to the right. But committed to this building and Central Library being the first two core buildings for the council to be connected.
It is coming. Yeah. We count for that. Were there any other questions, or can we move to? Shall we note the report then? Are committee happy to note the report? And thank you for all the information. That's been really helpful. Sure, that's done. And then the final report for this evening, agenda item 11, quarterly finance report, month 8, quarter 3. Back to Peter again.
Thanks. Once again, this is the same format you'll be familiar with in relation to the position of where we were at P8, which was November. So we've now just concluded P10, and obviously the council budget has been agreed with budget pressures being acknowledged and supported. So this is retrospective, but I will just walk through the report, it shows that there was an upside in the report in relation to revenue monitoring, and there's an explanation there of the challenge, particularly at the time, and it's remained this year, in relation to the energy supply cost in relation to prices and demand, and therefore we've reduced the pressure through mitigations, but we haven't been able to close it out. The budget agreed last month did put more money back into the energy budget to go into the new year with a larger budget to tackle the challenges of the energy market and costings. There was deterioration in the waste space due to increased cost into flighted. We talked about flighted a lot today, but there was a movement negatively from P5 in terms of waste. What we capture in the service, and every service and division, is risks and opportunities that we monitor, and you're pleased to see that they were gone the right way in relation to P8. But there's a summary there in terms of what were the risks that we were cited on and opportunities at P8. In terms of section C within the report, the two main capital programmes that we report here is the Decarbonisation Fund, as well as the Renewable Energy Investment Scheme. And there was a reprofiling of the Decarbonisation Fund in terms of what was originally allocated but also forecast. And the second paragraph at the bottom of page 433, for information, it was the reprofiling of the decarbonisation to support the delivery through City Leap for the next 3 years. Within that expenditure profile is the decarbonisation of the burners at Camford Crematoria, which are one of the biggest emitters on our network. It's good news. We are working closely with City Leap to electrify those burners, and I think Worcester Council is the only council ahead of us in relation to the development of a engineering design that will be funded through the Decarb Fund, but also from match funding as well. So that hopefully you'll see that coming through. But it's important that we brought the profile of City Leap moving forward rather than just 1 year, because that did get discussed at a previous S&R committee and a previous E&S committee. And then there is a breakdown on the PL18 energy service budget in relation to the spend to date, as well as forecasted expenditure around EV, Warm Homes Grant and the revolving fund. Hopefully that brings it to light where we were at P8, and we're now, P10 has passed and the budget's been approved, so an updated year-end report will be brought back.
Sure, thanks very much for highlighting all those issues. Question, Councillor Judd?
Yeah, just going to say, it sounds like we need an update paper on City Leap, doesn't it, with the issues with the heat network and slippage in budgets. So it'd be good to have some scrutiny of that project at this committee, wouldn't it, given the questions that have come up tonight?
Any other questions, or can we move to note the report? Oh, Councillor Weston.
I got to say, I rarely agree with Labour, but I think it would be good for us to actually take a look at City Leap at some stage. I don't think we need an extraordinary meeting. I know that was raised earlier, but on one of our future meetings, I do think it would be good for us to have a paper and to go through it and to see what it is.
Sure.
We had too much secrecy when it was first established. It'd be good to have a bit more scrutiny.
Sure. But what we've got is we're trying to bring together all the information for a briefing that will, I think, come first to us, and then we'll see what form makes sense. Because what we don't want to do is duplicate the meeting. We could sit in the same room when all their business plan is looked through and all of their projects for us are looked through, because they're all there and we're seeing the progress for each project. But we'll find something suitable, I'm sure. Okay, any other points, or can we note this report? Everyone happy to note it? I see heads nodding. Thank you very much. 5 to 8, we completed the business of the meeting. Thank you everyone for your contributions. The next meeting of the committee is on Thursday, the 26th of March, 2026 at 5 p.m. So that concludes the meeting. Thanks everyone. Good night.